we have with. So this is a big day, a beautiful day, potentially. So this is a big day, a beautiful day, potentially one of the great days ever in civilization. Things that have been going on for hundreds of years and thousands of years. At least we're at a minimum very, very close, and I think we're beyond very close. And I want to thank Bibi for really getting in there and doing a job. We've worked well together, as we have with many other countries, both of us, with many other countries, which is the only way this whole situation gets solved. And I'm not just talking about Gaza. Gaza is one thing, but we're talking about much beyond Gaza. The whole deal, everything getting solved. It's called peace in the Middle East. So today is a historic day for peace, and Prime Minister Netanyahu and I have just concluded an important meeting on many vital issues, including Iran, trade, the expansion of the Abraham Accords, and most importantly, we discussed how to end the war in Gaza, but it's just a part of the bigger picture, which is peace in the Middle East. And let's call it eternal peace in the Middle East. So this is far more than anybody expected, but the level of support that I've had from the nations in the Middle East and surrounding Israel and neighbors of Israel has been incredible.
We should be clear. This is not eternal peace in the Middle East. Let's also be clear that Europe and many of the quisling governments of the United States, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, etc., those are the states that he is effectively talking about, Turkey, that have said, hey, this is a great idea, let's do this. One European state after the next have come out saying, this is great, this is fantastic, this is awesome, you should do this, etc. But why? Trump put out a 20-point plan that is effectively an ultimatum masquerading as some kind of peace deal. How are you having a conversation with Netanyahu to resolve issues with Iran? How are you having issues or talking to Netanyahu, basically a war criminal and the person who's funding that war criminal walk into a room and they come out and say, hey, we have a peace plan for the people that we've been mass murdering for the last 2 years. And you can trust us because we are obviously very trustworthy. Donald Trump is a habitual liar, and so is Netanyahu. And the idea that these two are coming up with a plan that doesn't include Palestinians in the plan is rather amazing. It's an ultimatum. They've spent 2 years ritualistically murdering babies and enjoying doing so. They are dripped with blood. Netanyahu in that picture, dripping with blood on his hands. And yet they're supposed to come up with some kind of deal where they turn Gaza into a slave colony and they put another war criminal, Tony Blair, over top of it, with Donald Trump also being king of that particular colony. I don't know whether Hamas is going to accept this. I mean, to be honest, they may accept it just to show that Israel is not serious about it. But there are so many fail points in this plan. And Netanyahu, before he even gets out of DC, lets the cat out of the bag. I posted, the jig is up. And my point was, just like every other deal that the United States and Israel went with, anytime Israel broke the deal, which Israel always broke the deal, the United States pretended as if Israel didn't break the deal when it was obvious and clear that they did. This was true even under the Biden administration. If you remember, Count Smirkula, that degenerate Matthew Miller, that ghoul of a person, came out after he got out of office and said Israel's committing war crimes, and they broke every deal that we put in front of them. So why should we, rational human beings, with a longer memory of history than 2 minutes, meaning we don't have a memory of a hamster, look at Trump, who in multiple instances created lay-in-wait attacks to murder either negotiators or, for that matter, to murder the people he was negotiating with, either in Iran or, for that matter, in Israel itself, meaning in Gaza itself. Why does that person believe he has any credibility? And let's also be clear that the governments that are agreeing with us in the Middle East are just vassals. That's all, right? From the standpoint of Europe, the motivation is a bit different, and maybe it's not all that different. Europe, regardless of what they say, backs this colony of squatters. That needs to be understood. It's not just the United States that supports this genocidal rampage of Israel. Europe and European countries also, and Europe as a whole, meaning if you're getting the Levant, the lands, etc., they completely support it. The issue that they're having is that their populations don't. Even the population in the United States, take a look at this. Even the population in the United States, by the way, DD Geopolitics, they do good work. Regardless of what happened to Sarah, that hasn't changed. The rating of Israel in the United States hasn't just decreased, it's cratered, completely cratered. Do you think Israel is intentionally killing civilians? 40%, yes. That number used to be 22%. Unintentionally, 16%. Taking enough precautions. These two groups are idiots, but 25%. When you get into the other polling on this, it becomes more stark. Aid to Israel, 51% says they're oppose sending it in the United States. The majority of the US's don't send them squad. Why are we sending people who are committing a genocide assistance? When you get into 18 to 29-year-olds, the number goes to 68%. When you get to Black, 65%. Hispanic, 63%. Oppose. Sympathies for the first time since the question was asked in 1998. More Americans sympathize with Palestinians, 35%, than with Israel, 34%. These are seismic numbers. Ceasefire. Across their split, 6 in 10 Americans say Israel should stop its military campaign, even if Hamas is not eliminated or hostages remain. Only 30% wants this to continue. This is not just in the United States. This is all across the world. Apparently, the public only has so much stomach to watch babies, ghostly figures of babies, skeletal, get murdered by some gun-happy Israeli as he's cheering with his buddies and high-fiving. So Europe has a problem. Or at the very least, European leaders have a problem. You support a genocide. You support a maniac. It's not even hidden. It's not even like the Nazis who had sense enough to hide their genocide. This is something that everybody can see, ritualistic baby killing. So how do you deal with that? You deal with that by claiming a shiny object, two-state solution, and by probably screaming at Trump that something needs to be done to make us look a little bit better and to release the pressure on us. I know, let's come up with a scam ultimatum plan that we would try to get Hamas to accept. Hence, the European leaders falling in line saying, hey, this is a great idea, despite the fact that Hamas, Palestinians, had nothing to do with this deal. And what they're talking about is effectively a slave colony run by a war criminal and another person who supports war criminals, Donald Trump, at the behest of another genocidal war criminal, Netanyahu. So we're supposed to believe that 3 people who are completely in the pocket of Israel, at least in the context of believing and furthering the Zionist agenda of taking over the Middle East, that they are going to work with clean hands, despite the fact that there is no point in history that they ever did. We give Israel billions of dollars. Israel has broken every agreement that it's come up with. And after the agreement was broken, the United States, of course, turned around and blamed Hamas. Why would this be any different? Why would this be any different? Later in the show, I'll go through the 21-point plan. In fact, I'm going to go through it with Laith. He's going to come on the show today. He was feeling ill on Friday, so he's agreeing to join me today. I would imagine he is going to have some words about this. Also, the parts of the speeches that Donald Trump is making, the idea that Trump is saying eternal peace. Donald Trump knows nothing about the Middle East. This issue has been going on for 70, 80 years, not 1,000 years. For the longest time, Jews, Muslims, etc., lived fine together in that region of the world. it became an issue after the Balfour Declaration, and of course the British gifting somebody else's land to Israel. That's not thousands of years by any measure of the word. This is not a religious issue. This is about land and the theft of that land. And this deal, quote unquote, ultimatum that Donald Trump and Bibi Netanyahu, war criminal, genocidal monster, and the funder of that genocidal monster came up with, in no way addresses the root cause. I had a conversation with Bibi Netanyahu's press guy, and trying to be human and talking to the guy, I pointed out, dude, let's be honest with each other, because typically they don't be honest. But let's be honest. When you're talking to people, you have to know who you're talking to. Some people don't care about what's true. Some people just care about power. And in those cases, you're never going to get an honest assessment or honest answer out of those people. But I tried. And I tried to point out, this is, you realize that your issue that created October the 7th was that you were murdering, raping, imprisoning, and effectively subjugating and occupying a territory. Do you get that? And that until there's safety and security for the Palestinians, then you don't get safety, nor do you deserve safety. This is a human issue. It's a logic issue. And of course, he obfuscates, he huffs and puffs. Oh, we're the most moral military in the world and blah, 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 blah. Until you deal with that, you're not dealing with anything. And the reality of it is, there's so many fail points in this document that the document becomes entirely and completely unusable. For one, the IDF is not leaving Gaza. There's that. Two, if Netanyahu decides, well, I don't like what's taking place here, and I firmly believe that, something is taking place, then Israel can once again resume their attacks. And when they do, what is Donald Trump going to say? Is he going to say, well, Netanyahu is wrong in this, and I'm going to pull my dog back? Or is he going to say, that damn it, Hamas, look at what they're doing? I promise you, look back in history, over the course of the last several months, or the last several years, you will never find an instance where it was the opposite. This deal is dead on arrival in the sense of being an actual deal. And it is comically absurd and even extreme for a habitual liar to make this case that this is an eternal peace. Donald Trump even goes so far as to let the cat out of the bag and say this. Keep in mind, the Abraham Accords is just the way for Israel to be the superpower, to dominate the Middle East with the vassal states and the Muslim countries to effectively accept this kind of Jewish supremacy. Listen to what he says here. And think about, for a moment,
At some point,
what is in a person's mind and what this means to say it.
but they could be a member. I long ago said, I'll bet you at some point, Iran will be a member of the Accords. And little did I realize it was going to take this turn. That was some turn we did with the B-2s.
Iran, at some point, is going to be a member of the Abraham Accords. What would need to be true for that to take place? My point is very basic. This 21-point plan is not a plan at all. It is an ultimatum. There's a massive difference in those things. And it's one cooked up by Trump and Netanyahu for the purpose of subjugating the region with Palestinians not even having any level of self-determination in the process. My man is here. I want to bring him in. We are joined. He's looking cool today. Laith Marouf. How you doing, my man?
Hey, how you doing? Good. We're driving south, so
no, you're
sunglasses.
perfectly fine. No, man,
It's
I appreciate
pretty
it, man. It looks very bright outside, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Laith Marouf, he's an award-winning multimedia producer and media policy law consultant. You can find his work on Free Palestine TV or freepalestine.video if you're looking for it on the internet. Definitely check out his work. He comes out with, I always see his clips, but informative as always. And again, you're a fan favorite. The audience loves you, so definitely check him out. Thank you for joining me, man. I really do appreciate it.
Great to be with you, Jamal.
Have you had a chance to review Trump's 20-point, quote-unquote, peace plan for Gaza that him and the war criminal, genocidal maniac Netanyahu basically stood on the stage together and presented that in no way included the Palestinians?
Yeah, I did take a look at this toilet paper, and it's clear, obviously, that it's not a peace plan. But we can talk more about it, I guess.
Yeah, explain why you make the point that it's not a peace plan.
It is a surrender decree. What I would say is, Netanyahu, by the way, already spoke to media in the Zionist colony over the last few hours, and he said that there will be no Palestinian state. So this is what he tells the Israeli media, and that there will be no withdrawal of Israel from the Gaza Strip. So what we can understand from this is that this is an attempt to diffuse the buildup of pressure in the West, and specifically with the quote-unquote acknowledgement of Palestine as a state, which it seems like were actually organized by Trump and the Zionists themselves. If you put it on a timeline, it's clear that the intent of those admittance of Palestine as a state was to strengthen the Palestinian Authority, not about really any acknowledgement of Palestine as a state for real, and to build up to Netanyahu and Trump's press conference, and also add to it the attempted assassination of Hamas negotiators in Qatar. It's clear today with the statement by Qatar, Saudi, Turkey, Indonesia, Pakistan, all of that, supporting Trump's quote-unquote peace proposal, that the attack on the negotiators in Qatar was organized and approved by the Qataris themselves. And another layer to show you how all of these events that we've been seeing over the last few weeks have been, organized to the last little detail, is Indonesia signing on to this quote-unquote peace proposal. And we heard in Indonesia a few days ago or last week claiming that it has 20,000 soldiers ready to save Palestine. Even the theatrics of the president of Colombia in New York have to be put in this context, because remember, Colombia is still a vassal of the United States. Colombia is still the #1 cocaine exporter, meaning CIA's funder in the world, and Colombia still undermines Venezuela and Maduro. So the theatrics of Pedro, talking about an international force to protect the Palestinians again, is all to diffuse people's buildup of pressure in the West, in the whole world, where more and more people are willing to take direct action without being prompted, without having organizations behind them or anything like this. This is how much pressure there is now built up in the world, where the frustration of average citizens is leading them to possibilities of taking lone wolf actions on behalf of the Palestinian people. So I want to say that this proposal already is rejected, by the way, by Palestinian Islamic Jihad, by the PFLP, and most probably now, as those statements are coming from the various Palestinian factions, that Hamas is waiting for them to finally say also that it rejects it, because it's a proposal of subjugation, slavery for the Palestinian people, and humiliation and surrender. So the genocide will continue. There will be no international force that will come to the aid of the Palestinians other than the axis of resistance. And I would even go further and say probably the flotilla that we are seeing coming supposedly closer and closer to Gaza will be slaughtered and sunk, and people will be killed. And that Turkish government that also now approved Netanyahu's and Trump's peace will not come to the defense of its own citizens on those ships even, and will consider them that they got rid of some radicals that may have bothered the sleep of Erdogan. So this is not a peace proposal. It's a proposal to humiliate, to subjugate. And one last thing I would say is that this is part of the psychological warfare that the West is now depending on. The empire, the Zionist empire ruled from Washington, D.C., has lost every military battle. So military warfare, the U.S. lost it, Israel lost it in Lebanon, in Gaza, in Iran, in Yemen. They lost the propaganda warfare, and now the only thing that they have left is this psychological warfare. And I would add even that the idea of putting Blair as the viceroy that will govern the Gaza is part of this psychological warfare, because there's no one on this planet that doesn't know that Blair is a war criminal that has 1.5 million lives, on his conscience of killing all those Iraqis. And to choose him, the only purpose of it is to say, rub it in the face of the Palestinians, the Arabs, the Muslims, that Zionists can bring you a butcher right in your face that everybody knows will be the one that's going to govern Gaza, just as part of this psychological warfare. None of this is going to happen. Neither Blair is going to govern Gaza, nor the Palestinians are going to give up, nor is Israel going to be successful in this war, nor will Trump get what he wants. The Palestinians will fight till the last man, woman, and child in Gaza. And at the end of it, before that last child in Gaza dies, there will be no Israel. And I predict today that there will be a civil war in the United States. There will be blood in the streets of the United States before Gaza surrenders.
So I agree with you on a lot of that. I agree with you. When the Qatar thing happened, my first thought was, is Qatar part of this? I want to show you the clip just so the audience knows what you're referring to in regards to Netanyahu. This is him before even leaving Washington. Didn't even leave Washington. Listen to what he says. I'll read it for the audience just because he's speaking in Hebrew. This was the fourth visit to Washington. This was a historic visit. Instead of Hamas isolating us, we turned the tables and isolated Hamas. Now the entire world, including the Muslim world, is pressuring Hamas to accept the terms we set together with President Trump to release all the hostages, both living and deceased, while the IDF remains in most of the Strip. Who would have believed? Let's go back 1 second. Who would have believed this? After all, people were saying that you must accept Hamas's terms and everyone else. The IDF should withdraw, Hamas can recover, and it can also rehabilitate the Strip. No way, that's not happening. On the contrary, President Trump added that if Hamas refuses, he will give Israel full backing to complete the military operation and elimination. That's why, from my perspective, this and this part is important. They're asking him, is there going to be a Palestinian state? He says, absolutely not. It's also not written in the agreement, but there is one thing he did say, that we would strongly oppose a Palestinian state. So this idea that this is some pathway to a Palestinian state in the way that the people are talking about it is nonsense. He says, all right, absolutely not. And we're not removing the IDF from the Strip. You're right. It's a pressure release valve. It's all of these countries have effectively, or the public in these countries have gotten very angry, very agitated, and these countries are trying to find a way to bring down the hostility. And this is the way they think they can do it. Hey, by the way, we have a plan, and in 50 years, they may get a Palestinian state. It's like, yeah, no, not at all. Why do you think the Arab states agreed with us? I understand why Europe agreed with it. Why did the Arab states agree with it?
Look, all of these states are not actually states, they're vassals. Even Indonesia itself. Indonesia, of being a sovereign right after World War II when it was governed by Sukarno. And the United States organized a bloodbath in Indonesia where over 6 million people were killed, mainly communists. And Sukarno was assassinated, and Suharto was brought in to lead it into fascism. Okay, the Saudi Wahhabi cult was imported into Indonesia right after, because Indonesia was mainly either Sufi and or actually even part of the the same sect that we have in North Yemen. Okay, so there was no everything that we see here, all these countries didn't agree to something. They're just all this talk by Qatar, by Turkey, by Pakistan about Palestinian rights and so forth was all a ruse to diffuse the pressure in their own populations, but also to hide the fact that their own elites are collaborating since 1920 something with the Zionists. Okay, and add to it another layer here. The the leaders in these countries have been waiting for 70 years to kill every resistance around them, to destroy any Arabic state that resisted Zionism and imperialism. And the last state that was sovereign in the whole region was Syria. And today, there is no more Syria. There is no Nasser's Egypt. There is no Saddam's Iraq. There is no Libya of Gaddafi. And there is only vassals. And now they feel that they can have the courage to say the things as the master wants them. They don't need to anymore double speak pro-Palestinian and work against Palestine under the table. Now they can do it openly, because in their mind, there's no more challenger after the assassination of Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, after the destruction of Syria, after the assassination of the leadership of Hamas. This is what they believe, these vassal leaders in these Arabic and Muslim countries. And this is what Netanyahu believes. This is what Trump believes. They believe that they got rid of all of their main opponents for the first time in 80 years. There is no heavyweight leadership for the resistance as they see it. Of course, in my mind, this is all a delusion, because our people here in this region have birthed resistance under the worst conditions possible, and have resisted for these 80 years, 100 years, under unimaginable conditions. No other region today still resists, and have resisted continuously for 100 years. Even when, with all my love to my Latin brothers and sisters, Cuba didn't start resisting until the 60s, and still is an anomaly. Venezuela didn't appear on the map of resistance until the 2000s. With all my respect to all my brothers and sisters in Africa, where is the resistance there? Still the resistance is alive today under these conditions, because we know, we here have a belief that we are responsible to save humanity as a whole. The fall of Palestine will not be the fall of Palestine. It will be the fall of humanity as a whole. If there is no resistance in this region, there will have never been a revolutionary Cuba or revolutionary Venezuela or revolutionary anything in Africa or Asia. If the Arabs gave up 100 years, I can think all this shitty posts by people that claim to be anti-imperialists, anti-colonialists, that are talking down at Arabs. You better come down to the ground and kiss it under the feet of Arabs that are still resisting today under these conditions. You better come down and beg the children of Gaza and the children of Lebanon here for the honor that they're holding for all of humanity, while you all gave up. No, there is vassal Arab leaders, and they do not represent us, and we still say they don't represent us. Show me such resistance in any other region in the world when you want to criticize Arabs and Muslims for their failures. So it is important to put these things in context.
Yeah. No, that's powerful. That's powerful. The leaders themselves, the public doesn't back them on this stuff, though, right? I mean, like the publics in Saudi Arabia, in Qatar, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, part of the reason that they were putting on this act, this theater, was for their own local domestic populations. So there's no internal resistance in those countries against what the leadership in those countries are doing?
Yes, there is no internal resistance in these countries. Those peoples in Egypt, with all my love, in Turkey, with all my love, have been neutered. There is not only the dictatorship that controlled these countries and massacred tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands in Turkey and in Egypt, for instance, for decades, but there was also the lost generation of the quote-unquote Arab Spring, the Arab Autumn, where a whole generation was led astray by Al Jazeera and Obama and wasted all their energy to remove one vassal dictator to appoint another vassal dictator for the West, and then diffuse the energy that was building up in a whole generation. Those countries, unfortunately, the people there have been beaten down. Beaten down. It's not like the Egyptian poor man wants to give up on Gaza or Palestine, but they're scared. They're scared. There is right now in Jordan close to 6,000 political prisoners since the beginning of the Aqsa flood. 6,000 that nobody cares about. You know, just a few days ago, 2 Jordanian citizens went down to the border with the Zionist colony and shot Israeli soldiers. This story didn't carry, by the way, not even in most of the revolutionary media in the West. Nobody cared about it. But this is happening. This is happening. And the people in Gaza are not giving up. The people in Lebanon are not giving up. The people in Yemen, the people in Iran, and that is enough. I tell you, the children of Gaza, the children of Yemen, the children of Lebanon will liberate Palestine, with or without anyone's help. It's not like we've had help for the last 100 years from anybody. Even the goddamn Soviet Union sold us in the middle of the 1973 war. They're too scared to face off. Even Mr. Putin, if then Mr. Putin sold Syria, it doesn't matter. Syria will come back with or without Russia. Even China today has a responsibility to end its trade with a Zionist colony, to end its control of the Haifa port. China should stop building the trains and the subways in the Zionist colony. but I don't care if they do or not. We will liberate Palestine. Now, the question that I have for the audience that is in the West that is watching here, are you more docile than the Saud citizens or the Egyptian citizens? When is the last time a European people rose up in a revolution? Or are you just all toilet paper yourself? This is what people in the West have to be asking. Don't think about what decisions the Palestinians or the Lebanese or the Iranians should or shouldn't do. What are you doing? What are you doing to free yourself if you don't want to free Palestine?
You think there's going to be a civil
There
war?
hasn't been.
Oh no! Please finish. I'm sorry. I thought you had finished the thought. Please.
I definitely think there will be civil war because the amount of psychological warfare and repression that is now being meted in the West on their own citizens, and the fact that there is no electoral window for any representation of anti-genocide, anti-colonialism, it means the peaceful paths to change are impossible. And we can see that a whole generation in the West is discovering this. The problem currently is that there is no revolutionary leadership in the West that could take this momentum and take these stray peoples that are looking for some vassal to carry them into liberation movement, is leaving it where the population now is having to take action by itself individually, which could be a blessing. One reason it could be a blessing is with this mass surveillance right now, it's practically impossible to organize collectively.
Yeah.
And so the only successful actions that we saw right now in the West are ones that were taken by small groups or individuals alone, like Elisa Rodriguez, who is rotting now in American jails for liquidating true filthy Zionist workers in the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C. There should be Elias Rodriguez everywhere in the West, everywhere. Every day, there should be another Elias Rodriguez that by themselves takes action. There should be. And if this happens more frequently, the West will be dragged into repression even more. I personally wish Trump becomes more fascist, because number one, the American people deserve it.
You're
Deserve
going to get your wish.
full fascism.
You're going to get your wish. By the way, like, you will
Number
get your wish.
number two, yes. And number two is because fascism is a fire under the butts of people, and they'll move. If there's liberalism, they stay quiet and think that there's a way out. Fascism forces people into radicalism. I hope and wish that every Western state turns into full fascism, because one, as I said, the Western populace deserves fascism. Second is because maybe it will move people into action. This is it.
Yeah. Well, you're going to get your wish about the fascism thing. You can see it just in the way that it's operating, even in the level of violence that's taking place. It seems to be escalating. It's ticking up in a way that wasn't there prior. Also, you can see in the latest polling that the public has effectively turned against Israel in the United States. The number of people who want stuff sent has plummeted. I mean, the numbers have cratered. So, for example, do you think Israel is intentionally killing civilians? 40% says yes. That was 22% just a few years ago. If you get into civilian deaths, 62% of voters saying Israel's not taking enough precautions. I hate that word, precautions. Not taking any precautions. If you get into how people view Israel, for the first time, you have 51% of American voters saying we should send nothing. to Israel, to their benefit. And that number goes up to 65% if you're talking about blacks, 63% for Hispanics. You're seeing a change in the points of view. I mean, look at Italy. Italy was like literally rioting in the streets over the genocide that's taken place. You said something else also, that Israel is going to bomb that boat, the flotilla. That will be, I would argue, the worst outcome for them and the best outcome for any sort of revolutionary movement. Do you think that Europeans who are on that boat, if those Europeans get murdered by Israel, that European states, or at the very least the people in Europe, are going to be that much more agitated because of it?
Yeah, the European states will do nothing. You know, there was all this talk, oh, the Italian Navy is, well, the Italian Navy left already. They were there to just collect information on behalf of Israel.
Yeah.
The Spanish Navy openly said they will not be stopping Israeli attacks. They will only be saving people that are drowning. They're there to take the survivors back. The Turks had their drones flying over. What are they doing? Again, collecting information on behalf of the Israelis. That's what they're doing. And going back to the fact that the only kind of warfare that now the Zionist empire is investing in is psychological warfare, given that they've lost the military and the propaganda warfare. I would say that is almost 100% sure that they will intentionally kill and drown as many people as possible in our face. While the flotilla people are broadcasting from their ships, we will see their death. I don't wish that upon them. I wish they would have listened to advice that was given to them to tell, to redirect their flotilla to a more achievable goal of taking over, for instance, the British base in Cyprus, or blockading the Strait of Sicily, or the Strait of Gibraltar. But they will be sunk. They will be killed on live television, and it will be rubbed in their faces. And the Western elite, the Western governments will do nothing, and maybe this will trigger people in the streets of Europe to do something. But up until now, I don't know. I haven't seen any amount of death that triggered anything beyond the lone wolves like Elias Rodriguez. Maybe, I hope maybe that some of these deaths will trigger some action in the population. But that action has to be as radical as the genocide is. But up until now, I don't have much hope in Western movements. I hope I'm wrong.
I'm going to show you something else also, that the jig is up on this. There's so many fail points where Israel, they are trying to get the world to accept that Donald Trump and Netanyahu are quote unquote trustworthy, and that Donald Trump is going to sit on as a viceroy along with Tony Blair, and that if anything goes wrong, that they are somehow going to intervene to hold back their dog. Nobody believes that. Netanyahu came out, and again, he's saying the quiet part out loud, like they're not even hiding the ball on this stuff. And of course, European states are giving them all sorts of propaganda to make it look as if this is not what you say it is.
Easy way.
Listen to this.
But if Hamas rejects your plan, Mr. President, or if they supposedly accept it and then basically do everything to counter it, then Israel will finish the job by itself. This can be done the easy way, or it can be done the hard way, but it will be done.
Just think about that. A man that has been ritualistically murdering children live on camera for the last 2 years is like, well, we'll finish the job. Is it fair to say that if they could finish the job, they would have finished the job? Meaning, if they could have murdered every man, woman, and child, dog, cat, tick, etc., then they would have done that. But this deal, on some level, is a way for them to, I don't know, I guess give themselves time or something. The Israeli military obviously couldn't accomplish the objective. Give me your take on that. Do you think that's true? What are your thoughts?
I think, look, there's been a lot of propaganda over the last 2 years about Zionist military abilities.
Capabilities, yeah.
I am 100% sure that it was the Americans that conducted the assassination of Sayyid Hassan al-Islam. I am 100% sure, without any doubt, that it was the CIA behind the Asia terrorist attack. I know much of the Western audience has been conditioned to believe that Jews are the creme de la creme of all of humanity, that Israel and the Mossad have everything under control on every part of the planet, that they are the best soldiers, the best spies, the best musicians, the best doctors, the best everything.
Yeah.
The truth of the matter is actually they are the worst of everything. The only thing that Israelis and Zionists in general are good at is pedophilia, is pornography, is prostitution of their own women and their own mothers also. That's what they're good at. So can Israel defeat the Palestinians by itself? It never could. Not from day one in 1912 and not today in 2025. Israel will not be conducting these operations by itself. It never could conduct them by itself. It doesn't have the capacity to do so. Their soldiers are such cowards. They cannot confront the Palestinian warriors on the ground. And right now, I would say that the only way the Zionists can finish the job is continue as they are for another year. They are not going to be able to take over Gaza city lightly in a day or two. They haven't been able to take small villages in Gaza Strip in short time and or hold on to them for long. And
Right.
they're still fighting in those villages. So what we will see right now is a continuation of the same thing, except if they want to use a nuclear weapon on Gaza City. And they've already dropped the equivalent of 12 nuclear weapons on Gaza Strip over the last 2 years and haven't been able to defeat the Palestinians. So in the end, this is all just about psychological warfare. When Mr. Milowski says we're going to finish the job, it's part of his psychological warfare. He can't finish himself, okay? Let alone finish the job, all right? So this is the truth. This is all part of psychological warfare. Don't get dragged down by it. Don't believe anything. Look at what is happening on the ground, on the battlefield. Everything else is just psychological warfare. Israel is already finished. It will drag with it the whole West, and we will all be celebrating as the West ends its 600 years of destroying this planet, just to save this
colony of squatters? Yeah. Why do you say it will drag the entirety of the West down with it?
Well, look at it this way. Right now, you mentioned all those surveys, right?
Yes.
And what the West is going to have to do in order to maintain control of their populations without allowing them democratic will is to maximize their suppression. And that's going to have the reaction that everybody expects of militancy. And that's going to start civil unrest, civil wars, which is going to disrupt trade, which is going to disrupt education. I mean, I was just reading an article just now before we got on this about a Jewish professor at Cornell University who was teaching a class about Palestine. and the Israeli military sent an agent from Unit 8200, registered in the class, to instigate and to record the discussions in the classroom of the students with the professor, and then they got the professor fired, a Jewish professor. So what I'm trying to say to you is that there is no more academic freedoms, there's no science and pursuit of knowledge, there is no advancement in anything, right? All the advancement of Western society has now put on hold to accommodate the Zionist colony's survival. And not only put on hold as in the beginning of this genocide, now is retreat. And as have all studies shown us about stabilities of states, is change from this supposed democracy, freedom of speech, to limit those democracies and freedom of speech will be the trigger of civil war. Okay, this is not something unique for the West. Similarly, if you're a total dictatorship and you're trying to open up a little bit democracy or freedom of speech, that's going to trigger immediately the end of your state. The change that is happening is so drastic that there will be civil unrest. And up until now, we see the Western elite willing to burn down their own countries to maintain this Zionist colony. So I expect it not to change this reality, and we will see civil unrest, most probably civil wars in many of these countries.
Tell me something. I've never been to Lebanon, so I've never had the opportunity to visit the country. What are they thinking? Like, when I was in Malaysia, one of the guys asked me, he said, because Malaysia has a large Muslim population. And he says, what are your thoughts on the Israel thing? And I said, they're committing a genocide. Now, his take was, he knows that some Americans don't have that take, and he was curious about mine. I'm very curious about the way the Lebanese are looking at Western governments right now. I mean, the guy is openly talking about trying to have a civil war in Lebanon. They are openly backing a genocide. What are they thinking, just in general, about Americans and how, I guess, we're anesthetized to just evil?
Look, I think the vast majority of the population in Lebanon, is anti-Zionist now and anti-American and anti-West. Even those who would support the end of the genocide under these conditions that were being proposed by Trump and Netanyahu would do so saying that because the Americans will kill us all. It's not because they believe that the Americans are right. It's because they now see that the United States and the Zionists are willing to kill all of humanity. And those who agree to what Trump is saying today here in Lebanon is because they're scared. They believe that they're going to get killed. Okay. So obviously, the rest of the Lebanese population is even the ones that are not part of Hezbollah have now seen what it does mean to give up weapons, right? And this is why there is now more support for Hezbollah retaining its weapons than even before this war. Okay.
Wow.
There's also, by the way, a breaking news now story that a Palestinian shot 3 Israelis in Khudr, which is in the north of occupied Palestine, in the Galilee. Okay, so that you can see that this proposal. Inside Jerusalem. So you could see that any conditions that they're trying to put on Palestinians in Gaza is going to trigger actually more resistance in the other parts of Palestine. And you crush it, one side, another side will come out. They crushed the Palestinian resistance in Jordan in 1970. The Palestinian resistance in Lebanon arose. They crushed the Palestinian resistance in Lebanon in 1982. The Palestinian resistance in Gaza and the West Bank was triggered with the first Intifada. Okay, they crushed the second Intifada in the West Bank. You have full blown out armed resistance in Gaza. You crush now the resistance in Gaza, something will happen in 1948 territories and will arise. And the Palestinians, by the way, in Syria right now are getting killed left and right. Yesterday, HTS Wahhabi death squads entered the refugee camp in Aleppo and kidnapped hundreds of Palestinian men and disappeared them. So this is not something, if they crush all the Palestinian resistance in the region, a Palestinian in New York will do something.
Yeah.
A Palestinian in London will do something. This is not about Palestinian statehood. This is about liberation. This is about having dignity. We will not be slaves. We refuse to be slaves, even if it means we take down the whole world with us. We will take the whole world down with us if the world is not willing to liberate itself from American imperialism and Zionism. We'll take the whole world down with us. This is a promise, not from me. This is, I'm telling you, after reading history and living it for 100 years here in this region. The whole world will not sleep until Palestine is liberated.
Laith Marouf. Laith, you have my deepest appreciation, man. Thank you for this. Laith Marouf, he's award-winning multimedia producer and media policy law consultant. You can check out Laith's work at Free Palestine TV, that's on Twitter, or Free Palestine TV and Free Palestine TV that video. That's the other one. Did I get that? No, Free Palestine that video. Yeah, Free Palestine that video.
See you later, Jamal.
Thank you for this, man. You be safe, okay? Bye-bye. All right, Laith Marouf, fiery. Laith had a bit of a cold, which is why his voice was straining. But rage. What is the other response? Rage. Look, Americans, and obviously I'm one of them. You know, we got hit on 9/11. But imagine if that was just the norm, where any random day, a building can get taken down. Every random day, a car can get bombed. Any random day, a foreign invader can effectively kill your kids, your family members, etc. That's the life you're living. There have been multiple times where Laith was getting shot at. So I want you to put this in perspective in the way that he's strong on that. When I had, what is her name? I think Orson. She was a Lebanese journalist. And she went on a tear. But they bombed her house. Like, people get killed around her all the time. It creates rage, righteous indignation, and rage. I just want you to get where he's coming from with this. Also, let's go into the plan, just so you'll see the plan for your own eyes, because I don't think we went point by point, but let's go through it. Because when he's pointing out that this thing is unworkable and will not take place, you should understand what he means by it. Trump's 20-point plan to, quote, end Israel's genocide in Gaza, unquote. Gaza will be de-radicalized, terror-free zone that does not pose a threat to its neighbors. How ironic is that? Israel has murdered hundreds of thousands of people, killed babies, starved people to death, raped people on camera, with 60% saying fair rape. But the issue is that Gaza won't pose a threat to its neighbors. Israel has bombed Syria, occupied Syria, bombed Lebanon, has occupied Lebanon, has been killing, and has put through legislation to annex the West Bank. And they have obviously been killing and murdering Gazans en masse in front of our own eyes. But the problem is that we need to make sure that Gaza is not a threat to its neighbors. They want slaves. That's what they want. They want slaves. It is inhuman to be put in subjugation in such a way and then expect people to be okay with the fact that they're being subjugated. They're being murdered in mass. And the response of the White House is, we need you to calm down. I understand that they're murdering babies. We get it. We get it. We need you to chill out about it, though. Yeah, good luck with that. Gaza will be redeveloped for the benefit of the people of Gaza who have suffered more than enough. If both sides agree to this proposal, the war will be immediately end. Israeli forces will withdraw to an agreed plan line to prepare for hostage release. During this time, all military operations, including artillery bombardment, will be suspended. The battle lines will remain frozen until conditions are met for complete stage withdrawal. Problem: this is not a war. This is not a war. This is not like Russia and Ukraine, where you have battle lines. And in those battle lines, you have two militaries that are fighting one another, and you freeze the contact line. That's not this. This is Israel murdering people en masse, starving people to death. That's what this is. So what this provision effectively means is Israel military stays effectively where it is until some later date, which is why Netanyahu said the IDF isn't going anywhere. It's in the provision that they're not going anywhere. These are not two militaries that are fighting it out in a particular region. This is a country with nukes, tanks, bullets, bombs that gets billions of dollars in support for the United States bombing starving human beings. Put it in context. Within 72 hours of Israeli publicly accepting the agreement, all hostages alive and deceased will be returned. Once all hostages are released, Israel will release 250 life sentence prisoners, basically hostages, and 1,700 Gazans who were denied or detained after October 7th, again, hostages, including all women and children detained in that context, meaning they were putting children in jail. They were putting children in torture camps. For every Israeli hostage who remains are released, Israel will release the remains of 15 deceased Gazans. Well, you're going to be left with thousands of other Gazans that you've murdered. Once all hostages are returned, Hamas members who commit to peaceful coexistence and decommission their weapons will be given amnesty. Members of Hamas who wish to leave Gaza will be provided safe passage to receiving countries. Think about what that's saying. We need you to give up your weapons, and we need you to effectively chill out. So we want you to give up the hostages. We want to give up your arms. We want to completely, quote unquote, demilitarize. Again, this is not a military, but effectively give up all capacity of self-defense. That's what we want you to do. And trust us that we won't continue to murder you in the way Netanyahu said they will continue to murder. Upon acceptance of the agreement, full aid will be immediately sent to Gaza Strip. At a minimum, aid quantities will be consistent with what was included in the January 19th, 2025 agreement regarding humanitarian aid, including rehabilitation, infrastructure, meaning water, electricity, and sewage, rehabilitation of hospitals and bakeries, and entry of necessary equipment to remove rubble and open roads. Here's another question. We were told that Israel doesn't bomb hospitals. So why would you need to rehabilitate hospitals if Israel wasn't bombing hospitals? And the answer is obvious, because they were bombing hospitals. I can show you a picture of them murdering a doctor in a hospital today. I can show you them bombing cancer hospitals. The goal of this was to destroy the entirety of Gaza and make it unlivable for human existence. That was their goal. That's why they were bombing tents. The majority of people that got killed were killed in places that were supposed to be safe zones. Entry of distribution and aid to the Gaza Strip will proceed without interference from two parties. Hamas was not interfering with aid. What do you mean two parties? Hamas was not interfering with aid. Israel was paying gangs in order to steal aid, to make the lives of people that much more miserable in Gaza, and then claiming it was Hamas. Hamas would have no reason to steal aid. This document is infuriating. Entry of distribution of aid in the Gaza Strip will proceed without interference from two parties through the United Nations and its agencies and the Red Crescent, in addition to other international institutions not associated in any manner with either party. Opening the Rafah crossing in both directions will be subject to the same mechanism implemented on January 19th, 2025. Gaza will be governed under temporary transitional governance of a technocratic, apolitical Palestinian committee responsible for delivering the day-to-day running of public services, municipalities for the people of Gaza. This committee will be made up of qualified Palestinians and international experts. with oversight and supervision by an international transitional body, the Board of Peace. I'm just making shit up. Which will be headed and chaired by Donald Trump, the one that has been funding and paying for this genocide for the last year. Because you can totally trust that guy who's been paying for genocide, right? With other members, head of state to be announced, including former Prime Minister and war criminal Tony Blair. And apparently this is taking place until the Palestinian Authority is reformed. Hey, Jamal, what is wrong with the Palestinian Authority? I'm glad you asked. Netanyahu mentions some of his problems with the Palestinian Authority. Listen to the top 3 issues that Netanyahu mentions in regards to the problem with the Palestinian Authority.
ICJ, stopping incitement in the media, ending lawfare against Israel at the ICC, the ICJ, recognizing the Jewish state, and many, many other reforms. Stopping incitement.
So, hey, we need you to stop trying to take us to the International Criminal Court. And we need you to stop trying to take us to the ICJ. I know we're committing a genocide and all, but, you know, it's impolite to point out the fact that we're committing a genocide. Amazing, right? Amazing. Let's keep going. I want to finish the document. Trump's economic development plan to rebuild and energize Gaza will be created by convening a panel of experts who have helped birth some of the thriving modern miracle cities in the Middle East. Okay, now it's going to be a fundraising mechanism. They're going to make money off of the fact that they've murdered all of these people and destroyed all of this territory. Many thoughtful investment proposals and exciting development ideas have been crafted by well-meaning international groups and will be considered to synthesize the security and governance framework to attract and facilitate these investments that will create jobs, opportunity, and help the future of Gaza. Technocratic, so you're probably going to have everybody chipped, or at the very least tagged, probably some kind of digital ID where you can keep track of everything that the people are doing. And of course, under their model, there's no guns, there's no weapons. People have no capacity to defend themselves. And they will be under Tony Blair and Donald Trump for the foreseeable future. A special economic zone will be established with preferred tariff and access rates to be negotiated with participating countries. Again, the Palestinians have nothing to do with any of this. No one will be forced to leave Gaza, although those who wish to leave will be free to do so and to return. They're totally going to believe that. We will encourage people to stay and offer them opportunities to help build a better Gaza. Hamas and other factions agree not to have any role in the governance of Gaza, directly, indirectly, in any form. Effectively, people do not have control over their self-determination. All military terror and offensive infrastructure, including tunnels, weapon production facilities, will be destroyed and not rebuilt. Your ability to defend yourself will be eliminated. There will be a process of demilitarization of Gaza under the supervision of independent monitors, which will include placing weapons permanently beyond the use and agreed process of decommissioning and supported by internationally funded buybacks and reintegration programs of all verified independent monitors. New Gaza will be fully committed to rebuilding a prosperous economy and a peaceful coexistence with its neighbors. Again, Israel has invaded all of its neighbors and has murdered hundreds of thousands of people. But the document makes it look like the issue is Gaza. Gaza is a response. It's not an action in and of itself. It's a response to decades of subjugation and the fact that they've stolen their land with the expectation that people whose land you've stolen should just sit there and not feel some kind of way about the fact that you've stolen their land. Not to mention the bombings, the killings, the imprisonment, the throwing their kids in prison, the rapes that apparently Israel is okay with, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They've been doing this for 70 years. October 7th, then come out of a vacuum. A guarantee will be provided to regional partners to ensure that Hamas and its factions comply with obligations, and the new Gaza proposes no threat to its neighbors or its people again. What neighbors are you referring to? The United States will work with Arab and international partners to develop a temporary international stabilization force to immediately deploy in Gaza. So this is effectively a foreign military from various countries that they are talking about putting in Gaza. Question: if Israel is murdering Palestinians, will that force get involved to stop them from murdering Palestinians? Will the United States even acknowledge that Israel is doing so? Or will they turn a blind eye and blame Hamas? I think you already know the answer to that question, right? We've seen the answer to that question. Israel will not occupy, annex Gaza and the ISF. By the way, they already have on some level. Netanyahu has already said he's not leaving. And that is slow, indefinite process. And again, you have to believe that they won't create some trigger in which to go and murder dangerous babies once again. And if then Hamas delays or rejects the proposal, because right, it's Hamas is the one that's going to do that, right? The above, including the sealed up aid operation, will proceed in terror-free areas handed over from the IDF to the ISF, foreign militaries. An interfaith dialogue process was established based on the values of tolerance and peaceful coexistence to try to change the mindsets and narratives of Palestinians and Israelis to emphasizing the benefits that they can derive from peace. That's laughable. That's laughable. Go back for the moment and watch my video. I believe that her name was Kaylee. No, not Kaylee. What is her name? Jen Perlman. Jen was raised a Zionist. She was raised in this Jewish Zionist culture. What Jen will tell you, and what other people will tell you who've seen this and was raised in this, is that they are indoctrinated from birth to hate Palestinians, to think they're animals, less than human, etc. In the same way the Nazis were pushed to think of Jews as rats and so forth. Israelis, Zionists, raise their kids in the exact same light with the exact same level and intensity of propaganda. How do you fix that? How do you denazify Israel? That's the question that you're stuck with. You understand Gaza. Gaza is hateful because of what you're doing to them. Israel is hateful because they are hateful, and that is the way they raise their kids. Obviously, it's about land. We are stealing land from people, so we need to create a context by which to be able to maintain and also raise our kids to believe that they need to fight for this land. Oh, I know. Let's raise our kids to be brutally, viciously, fascist, and hateful human beings, the worst human beings, the scum of the earth. That's what we need to raise our kids to be. When Jen realized what was taking place, she points out that it took a bit of deprogramming to get her mind right, in which case she is, the woman she's gotten very aggressive as she's gotten older. I'll put it that way. She's fantastic. I'm trying to say that you would need to denazify Israel. And I get the sense that because of the tenor of this document, that is not the focus of this document. Let's keep going. Come on, there we are. We'll have a few more. While Gaza redevelopment advances and the Palestinian Authority reform program is faithfully carried out, the conditions may finally be in place for a credible pathway to Palestinian self-determination and statehood. Okay, well, hey, what does Netanyahu think about statehood? What does he think about it, right? Well, he tells you right here, very plainly, in Hebrew, before he even leaves the United States, meaning he comes out of a meeting with Trump, shakes hands, then comes out and makes this video.
אמר את זה, הוא אמר שהוא מבין את זה, הוא אמר באו"ם גם שזה יהווה פרס עצום לטרור וסכנה למדינת ישראל, וכמובן שאנחנו לא מסכימים.
תודה רבה, ראש הממשלה.
We won't agree to a Palestinian state, and Trump agrees with us. So according to Netanyahu, this document is already BS. Hey guys, let's have a 20-point process. And in 50 years, maybe you'll be grown up enough to have your own state. That's what this document is saying. And by putting it off, it allows these European countries, or these European colonies, I should say, these Arab colonies run by these oligarchs and these kingdoms that are under the subjugation of the United States. It allows them to say, hey, we are now backing a document that is on pathway to a Palestinian state. Are you not all entertained? That is the purpose of this document. We need to push this so far into the future. We need to give Israel military arrests. That's assuming the Israeli military, even stops. But ideally, we need to give them arrests. They're busted, they're tired, and they are offing themselves at ridiculous rates. So we can pretend like we have a process, and anytime that we need to come in and do bombing, we can do that. Donald Trump is not going to bitch or complain about it. And so this is the process that we're going to put into place. That's the document. It's a pressure release valve. It's not real. It's not earnest. And as Laith pointed out, many of the groups that are in Palestine have already rejected the document. Hamas hasn't given its assessment yet, but it will at some point. And last but not least, this. And come on. All right. The United States would establish a dialogue between Israel and the Palestinians to agree on political horizon for peaceful and prosperous coexistence. They think people are idiots. They think that your mind or your brain is made of cheese and mutton. This document is absurd. It is slavery. It is a colony. And there's so much mendaciousness built into the document. As I've always said, I've said it a few times, you tell the truth to stop a war. You lie to start a war, or at the very least, to keep one going. This is not a war. This is a genocide. There's a difference in those things. One side has tanks, missiles, bombs, bullets, airplanes, nuclear weapons. The other side has their guts, stuff and rubble that they find where they can fashion into weapons, and whatever guns they have left at their disposal. And desperation. That's what they have. That's not a war. And this document is grotesquely biased with holes strewn all throughout it, intentionally and purposefully, so Israel can continue the killing and the genocide, while the European states and the Arab states can pat themselves on the back and say, hey, we're supporting a document that's pushing for a two-state solution. That's the point. It's not a real thing. And don't take my word for it. Hey, Netanyahu, what do you think about all of this? And of course, there's no need to hide the ball anymore. So when Netanyahu is asked, he tells you directly. He says this.
But if Hamas rejects your plan, Mr. President, or if they supposedly accept it and then basically do everything to counter it, then Israel will finish the job by itself. This can be done the easy way, or it can be done the hard way, but it will be done. We prefer the easy way, but it has to be done. All these goals must be achieved because we didn't fight this horrible fight, sacrifice the finest of our young men.
Ain't that amazing? Goebbels couldn't do it better. Goebbels couldn't do it better. A man who has murdered hundreds of thousands of babies, who has starved millions of human beings, who has shot starving skeletons in the back, in the head, for fun, who drinks blood as a vampire, sits there and says, we can do this easy or hard. What have you been doing for the last 2 years? What does it mean to finish the mission? Is it to kill everybody that's there? From their point of view, every last one of them is a part of Hamas. So from their point of view, every tent that they bomb, every apartment building that they destroy, if you kill 100 people, then oh well, all of them were somehow connected to Hamas, so all of it was a clean kill. What people don't get sometimes in America is that that is a fascist, hateful, racist state, every bit as much as the Nazis. If the Nazis had to craft a plan for the Jews, would you trust it? Would you? I get many Americans haven't been to Israel. If you go, especially if you get the opportunity to go to Bethlehem and you see how they engage with the Palestinians, it is a racist, hateful state. And in being a racist, hateful state, they act like racist, hateful states in regards to the way they deal with and treat the Palestinians. And again, as I keep pointing out, they were raised that way. This wasn't an ideology they took on once they got over it. They were raised that way in the way that Christians are raised, or as the way as Muslims are raised. They were raised to be hateful little assholes. And when they grow up, they become satanic fascists in the way that they operate and deal with Palestinians. When you get an Israeli that is at a machine gun shooting starving people and is jizzed up by it, what is that person? What is that person? That is your society. 80% agree with what is taking place. So this is not like, well, hey man, there's innocent people. 80% or more agree with what's taking place. They raped a man on camera, and 60% of the population said, fair game. That is perfectly okay. We see no issue with that at all. That should tell you something about the society that you're effectively dealing with. And yeah, if you're talking about needing to denazify that society, it needs to be denazified. Otherwise, nothing is going to change. If you don't deal with the fact that they are occupying somebody else's land, nothing's going to change. And Donald Trump gave this nugget of lying that he probably doesn't even know any better. But I'm going to play it because this is a trope that Israel often puts out there. Like, no, man, we did leave Gaza. I mean, they just wouldn't leave us alone. We did leave. Listen to this.
Israel withdrew from Gaza thinking they would live in peace. Remember that a long time ago, they withdrew. They said, you take it. This is our contribution to peace. But that didn't work out. That didn't work out. It was the opposite of peace. They pulled away. They let them have it. And I never forgot that because I said, that doesn't sound like a good deal to me.
Never forgot it. He
As a
didn't even
real
know
estate
about it.
person, I mean, they gave up the ocean, right? Ron, they gave up the ocean. They said, who would do this deal? And it still didn't work out. They were very generous, actually. Israel withdrew from Gaza thinking they would live in peace. Remember that a long time ago, they withdrew. They said,
Israel never withdrew from Gaza. Full stop. UN agencies consider the fact that they can still control air, water, etc., meaning you effectively had an open air ghetto, that you effectively control the borders and the airspace of that ghetto. That's not a country. Didn't have an airport, didn't have anything of a typical state. That is not leaving Gaza. You are still occupying that state. So I know they like to put that trope out there, but nobody accepts that as actually leaving Gaza. Shout out to Laith. Emotional, but I felt his pain on that one. I felt this pain. How much time do we have? Okay, screw it. I'll try to get it in. Yeah, I'm not gonna have time to get it in. I will put this, let's hit news stories. So apparently, the Trump administration is working with political opposition in Venezuela to overthrow the Venezuelan government. Now, this came out by the New York Times. Do I have the story up? Yes, I have the story. Right here. This apparently is being led by Rubio. Trump aides push for ousting Maduro from power in Venezuela. An opposition movement whose figures have met with the U.S. officials says it is communicating with Washington on plans to dismantle Nicolas Maduro's, quote, criminal structure, unquote. Now, I would tell you right off the bat, these people are traitors. This is textbook definition of treason. In the United States, they will be hung or shot. I don't know which one, but I'm pointing out that these people are collaborating with a foreign government that is trying to destroy and occupy Venezuela, or at the very least overthrow the government of Venezuela. They're working with a foreign entity to do it. By definition, that is treason. A note should be sent to the New York Times as a thank you for outing them, and they should be rounded up. And whatever the laws is in Venezuela for treasonous people, that should be acted up. That is outrageous. Absolutely outrageous. Let's keep going. Okay, good. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm just going to read the top line. The push by top aides in the Trump administration to remove Nicolas Maduro as leader of Venezuela has intensified in recent days, with administration officials discussing a broad campaign that would escalate military pressure to try to force him out of office. This is what U.S. officials said. It is being led by Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State and National Advisor. Marco Rubio argues that Maduro is a, quote, illegitimate leader. And of course, who the F are you? Who the F are you? Who are you to tell another country that they're an illegitimate leader? It's like, fuck off. Who oversees the export of drugs to the United States, which he says poses an imminent threat. If that is the case, you will be bombing Ecuador. If that's the case, you'll be bombing Ecuador. Not to mention, or you'll be bombing CIA headquarters. One or the other. In recent weeks, the U.S. military has launched lethal attacks. They've murdered people in boats. That's what they've done. They've murdered people in boats. The administration said they were smuggling drugs from Venezuelan gangs. There was no evidence of that. Marco Rubio is shaping a more aggressive strategy using intelligence provided by the CIA. The officials said the Pentagon has built a force of more than 6,500 troops in the region. Later in the article, they point out that they are working with opposition in order to accomplish this objective. That's amazing. Keep in mind, the opposition is working with the United States, despite the fact that the United States murdered other Venezuelans. So there was no outrage over the fact that the U.S. murdered random people. Instead, they decided, let's work with these colonizers and occupiers. Let's work with these bloodthirsty psychopaths that have murdered our own citizens in order to overthrow our own government. Let's do that. Effectively, another Ukraine. That is amazing. That is being led by Rubio. Be aware. The other article that is out has to do with a meeting of generals. Karen Kwiatkowski is going to hit that when she gets in later today. I think she's going to be in at 9. But apparently, all of these generals, hundreds of them, have been called for a rare in-person meeting, the Hegseth. Now, when the Washington Post first reported this, they said Hegseth wanted to talk to them about warrior ethos, whatever the hell that means. Donald Trump apparently is also going to show up at that particular meeting. We have no idea in real terms what that meeting is about. Zero clue. Zero clue. But I hear my man is here. I am joined, the man of the hour, Daniel Lazar. How you doing, man? You doing okay today?
Very well, thank you. Yeah, much better than yesterday, I'll tell you that.
Well, good. I'm glad you are. I'm glad you are. Look, man, we're human beings.
Yeah.
Anything can happen at any moment.
Yeah.
So no, I'm just glad you're well. Daniel Lazar, he's an independent journalist, author, that's known as a critic of the U.S. Constitution, American politics, government, and social policy in general. He's written several books, including The Frozen Republic, Velvet Coup, and America's Undeclared War. Daniel, I brought you on because I wanted to talk about something that seems to be the case. Maybe I'm getting this wrong. Maybe it's my own, location on Earth as I'm perched looking at the world. It seems that we are unraveling as a society. I don't know if you've ever had the opportunity to read the book End Times by Peter Turchin. He makes this strident case looking at historical context from society after society after society after society about how those societies unravel. And he describes a society that looks a lot like ours. And he's even predicting that the US will end up in either some kind of revolution or civil war. You would have to read the book because he goes into the reasons why. It has to do with this overproduction of elites and the miseration of the working class and the poor, and how the government gets so stick-to-itive that it lacks the ability and dexterity to deal with real issues. And eventually somebody rises up that wants to be an elite and uses the miseration of the poor as almost a cudgel to go after the political structure, creating either a civil war or some kind of revolution in a society. But beyond all of that, just as a microscopic view as you're looking at it, tell me if I'm wrong in this. I mean, even the number of mass shootings, the number of killings, the political killings that are taking place, it seems like those things are increasing. They even tried to kill Trump.
Yes, well, I mean, I think the breakdown is not just limited to the U.S. It extends around the world. I mean, Europe as well. India is in the grips of a right-wing Hindu nationalist party, contributing to growing income polarization. Same phenomenon we see around the world. Nepal just had an uprising, a very fierce uprising that put much of the capital, Kathmandu, in flames, and it turns out to have been, perhaps not dominated, but certainly right-wing, monarchist elements were highly influential in those protests. So it seems that this kind of Trumpist wave is just crashing around the world. So people draw comparisons. Rome is the favorite comparison.
Mhm.
By the 5th century Rome, there was incredible income polarization. The wealthy senatorial elite, had 100 times more wealth per person than it had, in the 1st century.
Wow.
And the peasantry was being talk about immiseration, just reduced to the lowest levels of degradation and immiseration. And so when the barbarians, the Germans, the Goths, began making inroads into the country. In 410, Rome was sacked by a branch of the Goths known as the Visigoths. People actually, many of the peasants and displaced, urban slum dwellers viewed them as liberators, and to a certain degree they were. But the difference today is that it's Rome was one empire, in the middle, whereas capitalism today is a truly global system. So it's not a case of empires being besieged by barbarians from without. It's a case of an entire global system which seems to be wearing down. Is no longer functioning very well. It's causing all kinds of political disorders and breakdowns. And the crisis is very heavily concentrated in the U.S., but it's not only the U.S. It extends as far as Nepal, for example, which you would think of as a peripheral country, but no, but it's also in the eye of the storm. And then of course there's global warming.
Yes.
And that is the real game changer. I mean, that actually threatens the very future of humanity, and the system has no answer to that, none whatsoever. They are simply incapable of tackling this problem in any kind of systematic, effective way. And not only that, but Trump is now leading, the charge into unreality, into denial. This crisis is even taking place. So that the entire global system seems to be really under growing strain.
Yeah, but we don't have to. With two things, many people would say that what took place in Nepal was a color revolution. That if you look at like the NGOs that were associated with pushing that to take place, the students' anger was real, no doubt about that. Like you can see them online, very pissed off, very angry. Stop saying these, this is a color revolution and everything else. But the people who were supporting it behind the scenes were these kind of U.S. instruments and U.S. institutions that were trying to create all sorts of chaos around China. I mean, and see, that's the other thing, right? There's a difference between an organic revolution that takes place versus attempts to destabilize a country that you're in a hybrid war with. So Colombia and Thailand gets involved, Pakistan and India gets involved. And it's like all of these things have in common is that they're surrounding China, who wants to have Belt and Road Initiative, et cetera. Meaning they want to grow and expand and they want to create these kind of trade relationships. And it just so happens that many of the countries that they're trying to have these relationships with get embroiled in the conflicts. So it's like I feel like we're the root of that stuff. I don't know if it would happen that way if it wasn't for the way the U.S. was pushing it using these NGOs. But correct me if I'm wrong on that. I mean, I find it to be secondary from the crisis that I see in the United States. But I could be wrong. Please tell me if I am.
Well, actually, I really am not in a position to tell you you're wrong, because I don't know about the role of the NGOs in Nepal. It's entirely plausible there was a significant role, and it's entirely plausible that the U.S. is trying to use the NGOs in order to have leverage on Nepal and to push Nepal into an anti-China point of view. But bear in mind, the funny thing about it is, even though Nepal looks like it's next door to China, Nepal is walled off from China by the world's highest mountain range. And that's, so in a sense, Japan is closer to Los Angeles than Nepal is to China.
Oh, because of the mountains. Oh, that's interesting.
Well, that's a vast, huge barrier.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as I'm aware, Nepal's cultural ties are with India rather than China, but it's complicated. It's a part of the world I don't know that much about. But the U.S. role is very important. The U.S. is the global hegemon, and what that means is that the U.S. is far and away the greatest single power, if we just rule out China for the moment. And the U.S. uses its enormous political and economic clout in order to steer the world in a pro-U.S. direction. And certainly the Democrats under Biden were very aggressive in doing that. And now Trump is taking a somewhat different tack. It's kind of hard to figure out what Trump is really up to, but certainly Trump is taking a different approach. Trump seems to be really focused on the Persian Gulf these days. The Persian Gulf, the Caribbean, Latin America in general. And even it seems as if the South China Sea seems to have slipped off the U.S. radar screen for a short time. I'm sure it'll be back on very quickly. But for the moment, the U.S. is focused on the Persian Gulf and the Caribbean, and those are the real battle zones these days.
Yeah. For the audience that is not familiar with your books and familiar with this hypothesis that, look, the issue is we need a revolution, that the government, you mentioned just now that the government can't tackle climate change. The government can't even pass a budget. Like basic things, right?
Yeah. The government may cease to exist in about 15 hours? Yeah.
But how can a government like that tackle big things, big issues? Like this country at one point sent a man to the moon. And now this country, if you look at the Artemis mission, that mission is trash. Like the amount of money that they're spending on this stuff, it's over bloated. It's not ready. It's going to be delayed. That's assuming that it takes off at all. Meaning you had a government at one point that seemingly had the ability to do big things, to dream big, to be braggadocious in the way that it went about that stuff and succeed at it. And now the most basic things in the world, like, hey, let's build high-speed rail. Can't pull it off. Hey, let's send a man to the moon or send a man to Mars. Can't pull it off. Hey, let's pass a budget. Can't pull it off.
Yes, absolutely correct. There's a political crisis around the world. All the global ruling institutions are breaking down. The UN, the EU, etc. Yes. But it's the U.S. where the damage is most extensive. America has a 238-year-old constitution, dating from the age of silk knee breeches, powdered wigs, and slavery, and it's impossible to change. Literally impossible to change. And not only. It's the same constitution, yet in many ways it's actually worse. Bodies like the Senate, or the Electoral College, are actually more imbalanced, less representative than they were in the 18th century. Things are getting worse. The vice is squeezing tighter and tighter, and Congress hasn't worked in 30 years. The Supreme Court, is this arch reactionary body, which is completely and wholly unaccountable to the general public, and the House is gerrymandered to death, and the U.S. Senate is a monstrosity of a misrepresentation. I could go through the figures. A majority of the country lives in 10 states, and they are outvoted 4-1 by the minority in the other 40. The Republicans have a 53-seat majority in the Senate today, yet they only represent 45% of Americans. Those 53 senators only represent 45% of Americans. The Electoral College, triples or even almost quadruples the weight of lily white rural states like Wyoming versus minority majority giants like California. It's undemocratic. And so the people have no real say in their government. And so things are really bad, but the people are completely powerless when it comes to setting things right. So it's like being in a car that's hurtling down a hill towards a cliff, and the steering wheel doesn't work, comes off in your hands, and the brakes don't work. So the car is out of control, and there's nothing you can do. So there is this sense of being in this juggernaut, which is just veering out of control. And Trump is grabbing power because nobody else is in a position to say no.
Yeah, but the public seems disengaged. Do you think that what's going on is that the public is so accustomed? How can I say this? I get the sense that they think that governments are permanent fixtures. Because we've had this government for so long, we've had two oceans to protect us. And we haven't really had, Canada and Mexico, for the most part, are allies, or at the very least not enemies. That we think this government is a permanent thing. Not that it's a legal fiction that can be unraveled. And, especially during revolutions or something like that, if there's some kind of political chaos. And by revolution, I don't mean you have two armies side by side. That can take all sorts of shapes. That could be people killing each other. That could be states pulling away from the U.S. That can look like all sorts of ways. But do you think that they're under this myth or misconception that this stuff is just permanent and this stuff is real? And because they think it's permanent and real, they don't see a crisis. They don't see this idea of, look, this seems to be unraveling before our very eyes. Well,
first of all, the average American is juggling 3 jobs. He or she is financially stressed. They got kids to manage. There are signs that that kids are psychologically faring not very well these days. So parents have got a lot in their hands. They're economically insecure, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, the average person is weighed down by concerns like that, and some of the statistics are really alarming. Most Americans don't read papers, they don't watch TV news, they get their news from a few scattered sources, and that's it. And most of the time, they're too busy going about their daily lives to pay attention. But yeah, I think that polls make it quite clear that there is a growing sense of alarm about where the country is heading, and a growing sense, there's utter dismay, utter lack of confidence in the Democrats. Their polls are rock bottom. So even if the public is unhappy with what Trump is doing, they can't think of an alternative. They can't figure a way out of this box. So they feel trapped now. But as I say, they're depressed. They're worried about their own lives. They're trying to hold things together, but they feel helpless.
Yeah.
And in revolutions, helplessness does not cause revolutions. I mean, revolutions are anger, but also some sense of hope, some sense that people can control their own fates. and that's not happening yet.
Do you see that happening?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. I mean, in an odd way, I'm actually optimistic about the U.S. And more optimistic about the U.S. than I am about other regions of the world. For example, Europe.
Yeah.
I mean, the U.S. is this very big country. It is in some ways very tightly united. Americans, there's a large Spanish-speaking population, but 98% of Americans are fluent in English. The market is very united. We shop for the same groceries from coast to coast, et cetera, et cetera. And we have the same body of law, the U.S. Constitution. And the U.S. Constitution is this very powerful document, which insinuates itself into every nook and cranny of everyday life. I mean, in the sense, the computer that I'm using, the software we're using to talk. I mean, in certain ways, these are constitutional, in the sense that these are all products of the U.S. political legal system. So so the Constitution is all pervasive, and yet it is breaking down, and it's unreformable and unrescuable. So therefore, what that means is that for 335 million people, they all face this problem in that their politico-legal structure is collapsing around them. There is no way of stopping the collapse. And at some point, they've got to take things in hand and collectively restructure, reconstitute their society. And I think that's actually happening sooner rather than later. And that is a revolutionary moment. So
explain that. But why do you think that's happening sooner rather than later? Is it just because things get so bad standing still?
Yeah.
That
yeah.
you know.
Exactly. I mean, Trump is gonna drive this country into the ground. I mean, Trump is taking away benefits, health care, housing protections, 1,000 different things, which are going to impact very severely on living conditions for the mass of American workers and the middle class as well. And I am that there's no question in my mind that life is going to get very grim in the U.S. And the more things break down under Trump, the more clearly it becomes this monstrous oligarchy in which billionaires run the entire country for themselves, and that the average person has no influence, no control, no political say. So the question is, the political structure as a result is much more fragile than I think most people realize. In 1786, Louis XVI, the king of France, was 1786 though, 3 years before the revolution. He embarked on a cross-country tour, which is very unusual because usually the king stayed in Versailles. And every stop he made, he was greeted by cheering crowds. Couldn't have been more enthusiastic. And anybody who watched that royal procession would have said the ties between the people and the monarchy are absolutely unbreakable. Come what may, the people of France love their king, want their king, believe in their king, et cetera, et cetera. 1786. 1789 marks the French Revolution. January 1793. The same guy, Louis XVI, is marched to the guillotine, gets his head chopped off, and no one in France lifts a finger to save him. And so all I'm saying is that what seemed to be an absolutely permanent situation turned out to be, in a blink of the eye, so to speak, turned out to be highly impermanent, highly volatile, highly explosive. And so, yeah, they have this Constitution, which is 238 years old, and it seems to be completely permanent. Americans believe in their Constitution. They love their Constitution. They can't imagine life without their Constitution. Yet, when the Constitution goes, no one's going to lift a finger to save it because it's this completely raggedy, ancient document, which is totally out of date, can't be repaired in part, can only be replaced in toto. And so I believe that moment is coming. And now, I'm not complacent. It's not going to be an automatic process. But right. but the fact is, and I think this process, I'm absolutely convinced, will be led by the working class, which is the people who have suffered most from this growing inequity and the ongoing social decay, and they will demand a workers' democracy. That is a democracy which is geared to the needs of the working class, and that's socialism. So the world's most reactionary conservative society could be on the brink of the most powerful socialist revolution, which will make the Bolshevik Revolution seem like a warm-up.
How do you make the distinction between people versus the document? And what I mean by that is I think Turchin would argue that when you have so many elites in a society, and they get to the point where they start conforming media, basically, they make themselves comfortable because they are comfortable. They have the ability to set policy where they can get more money. They have the ability to set policy where they can get media to say, well, they deserve more money. They have the ability to make sure you make less and they make more. And that becomes so ossified in a society. And on some level, you could say, well, the document is old and the document allows them to do it. But even if you had a different document, you're still stuck with the same process of people getting very accustomed to a particular system and figuring out how to grease the wheels for themselves to make more. Is that a document issue or is that a people issue? I hope you understand what I mean.
Yeah, it's both. I mean, the Constitution starts off with "We the people," right. And it seems to establish we the people as sovereign. In other words, the absolute supreme power. But then it spends the rest of the document, sort of narrowing the people's power, impinging on it, reducing it, subordinating it to a permanent body of law. And in the end, the people sort of wind up, you can think of the document as a kind of journey over 4,000 words, not counting the amendments. And so it starts off with a really big and powerful sense of we the people, and it ends up with a very reduced sense of the people as the people very fragmented and severely constrained by this body of unchangeable law. So the sense of we the people is only half developed. But you've got to develop the sense in the full word, in the full sense. The people have got to understand that they really are in control, and they have the power to remake society. And I mean this collectively and democratically, but revolutionarily, to remake society from top to bottom. Top to bottom. I mean, if we the people say, we want to, no more forks on the left and knives on the right. We the people ordain that that you should put knives on the left and forks on the right. People, they can do that. Whether they should do that is another question. But the people have the power, and by the people I mean the mass of working people, have the power to completely remake their society from top to bottom and to deal with these extraordinarily oppressive, wealth differentials. By the way, the Institute for Policy Studies, this left liberal group in Washington, had a report out in late August. The new CEO of Starbucks, who earns $95.8 million a year, earns $6,600 and 66 times what an average barista makes. I mean, this is extraordinary. And this is that, and you can't have a democracy with differentials like this. You know, we're not talking about, you know, about a doctor versus a carpenter. We're talking about something 1,000 times more extreme. And you can't have a democracy like this. And the people will have to deal, but they haven't gotten a sense of their strength. This hasn't happened. But if it happens in the US, and I think things are very brittle, if they happen here, this will be a transformative global event. And remember, I mean, Russia in 1917 was on the edge of Europe. It was not the center of Europe. It was on the edge of Europe. The French Revolution was in the center of Europe, which made it so extraordinarily powerful. So in this sense, America will be closer to France in 1789. But we're sitting, the America is entering into a revolutionary situation, and that is a event of global historical significance.
I feel you. From your mouth to God's ears. I guess from my point of view, it feels like it's unraveling in a way that's violent. That people, and maybe this is just because of the killings that I'm seeing recently. You know, your point of view could be tweaked just based on what you're saying. The guy who, what was it, the Michigan killer, Charlie Kirk, tried to kill Donald Trump. You got the guy who went into the church and murdered all those people, the Mormon thing. This stuff seems to be happening more often.
Yeah, somebody shot up an ABC affiliate in California. I mean, remember, there are more guns than people in the United States.
Murder of the CEO. That stuff seems to be more. And if you look at social media, the language, like the way the Charlie Kirk thing is being used as a political cudgel. Donald Trump putting military in various cities that are effectively democratic cities. That stuff is so beyond the pale. I don't think America has realized how beyond the pale that is. He is making it up in order to do that. Meaning what he is doing is not even something that's in law. He is just doing it. And so it's kind of like, okay, what is this? This looks like a creeping fascist government like a frog being boiled, but they don't necessarily entirely see the fact that they're being boiled yet. I don't know.
Yes,
it just looks like something is changing.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's social breakdown and authoritarianism, and the two go hand in hand. I mean, if the fabric is unraveling, as I said, there are more guns than people in the U.S.
Yeah.
And I think the last time I saw it was that the figure was more than 400 million guns, and there's only 330 million people in the U.S.
Like 1.5 guns per person.
That's 1.2 or thereabouts. Anyway, and for every man, woman, and child, and so therefore, you know, people do take pot shots at the, can take their gun out and kill people whenever they want, but that's not a social movement. That's actually a highly individualistic form of warfare. And it really does play into the hands of the ultra right, and Trump uses it in order to deepen his authoritarianism. I mean, as I'm sure you know, Pete Hegseth is bringing in 800 generals, U.S. generals, to a meeting in Quantico, Virginia. No one knows what the hell it's for. No one knows what the hell.
They said warrior ethos, whatever the hell that means. Warrior ethos.
No one knows, but I mean, plainly, things are just falling apart in this country, and an authoritarianism, dictatorship, is advancing by leaps and bounds, and the process is intensifying. But workers are not going to win by pulling out their guns and taking aim at people they don't like. They have got to act collectively and in solidarity and demand a change of government, a change not only in the people of government, but a change in the very nature of government.
We have to close this, but I guess my concern is that both of those things are equals. And I don't mean equals in the sense that one is work, that they're equally good. What I mean is, if you had a, let's say you had a graph and you were plotting these elements on a graph, one would be -1, the other one would be +1. I'm saying that, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, they can break either way. Both are some level of societal decay. It's just one, the society is trying to correct itself in the process of that decay, whereas the other one, it just unravels. People are shooting each other. Countries or states are fighting back against the federal government because of the way the federal government is putting in troops. People are rioting at the Capitol. Like, that doesn't seem like people are coming together. That seems like people are falling apart in this kind of political fashion. Last point, I'll let you close it on this one.
Well, essentially, we're frozen at a level of early democracy, and plainly, humanity has got to advance to a higher stage of democracy.
Agreed.
International democracy, where the people of the entire world take control of their planet. And master it collectively and address collectively things like global warming. Homo sapiens are part of the hominin line, and previous hominin species have died out. Homo erectus, Homo neanderthalis, Homo denisovus, whatever it was called, they've all died out. So the question is, will Homo sapiens, who have advanced to a fantastic level, but can they make the leap to the point where, as a species, they can collectively master their own fate, and take control of their global society and make it work for the great majority of people within it? So we're really at a historic point, and as I say, I remain fundamentally optimistic.
You know, it's funny, and we'll close on this. In Star Trek, when they try to explain how that leap took place, they effectively said there was a world war, there was another war, the planet had gotten to the brink of collapse in regards to the environment, and humanity, just as a self-preservation mechanism, became better stewards as a result. But all hell broke loose before humanity made the cognitive jump.
Well, I hope we don't have to go through hell.
Right.
But
Right.
I do agree that essentially out of crisis comes solutions.
Daniel, I always appreciate these conversations, man. I swear I do. Daniel Lazar. Daniel Lazar is an independent journalist, author, best known as a critic of the U.S. Constitution, American politics and government, social policy in general. He's written several books, including Frozen Republic, Velvet Coup, America's Undeclared War. You can find Daniel's writing on X at DH Lazar. You can also find him on permanentrevolution.org and daniellazar.substack.com. Daniel, you have a fantastic rest of your day, man. Thank you for this.
Same to you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. Shout out to Daniel Lazar. Always appreciate him. And I am going to bring on my next guest. We are joined with the woman herself, former, or let's say, Lieutenant Colonel Karen Kwiatkowski.
Good.
Said it with infinite confidence. I said it with infinite confidence. I was going to nail that name. She is a retired U.S. Air Force officer whose assignments include duties as Pentagon desk officer, various roles for the National Security Agency. She's author of several books, including this is called African Crisis Response Initiative, Past, Present, and Future, and also the book Expeditionary Air Operations in Africa, Challenges and Solutions. I swear one day we have to talk about that because I'm very curious about what those books mean. How you doing this morning? You doing okay?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good.
let's start with your Substack article. Let's start with that. So as we were having a conversation, Pete Hegseth has called together hundreds of generals to meet. Now, we don't exactly know what this meeting is. The Washington Post said it was about warrior ethos. Donald Trump has said, well, we're going to tell them how good of a job they're doing, et cetera, et cetera. But we don't have a clear understanding of why that meeting is taking place today. Your article, right here, just to show the audience, basically gave an idea of what you would want them to say. And I sat there and read this article. I was like, Karen knows that this is not what is going to be uttered at all. If you had to guess, I mean, you were in the military, you were in the Pentagon. This is odd, right? This is not something.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, first off, only a few weeks ago, he became the Secretary of War, right? We have no declared wars. We haven't had a congressionally declared war since World War II. But anyway, he's going to be the Secretary of War. That's a new title. And the first thing that he does is the most non-strategic war act you can think of doing. And that is to collect all of your leadership from all over the world. They're saying, oh, they're coming from all over the United States. No, they're coming from all over the world. We have troops in 155 different countries. We have commands that span the globe. They're all headed by a large number of generals and admirals. So he's bringing them in from everywhere, putting them in Quantico to have a meeting, a public meeting, which is, the whole thing is so unstrategic. It especially in today's age of electronic communications and video. I could see if he had a video chat, but he doesn't want to do that. He wants them all here. And that is actually indicative of only one of two things. One is you totally have no idea of military strategy at all. You couldn't win a war if you were, handed it. It was handed to you already won. You would lose it. So that's one thing. And the other thing is that perhaps he does intend to fire people, and he wants them in control, in a controlled room, so they can't go and sabotage their computers on their way out. You know how people do sometimes when there's layoffs, and actually in a lot of places where they do layoffs or firings, they are done very strategically because they don't want the people to take their intellectual property or whatever. So right. So it's either they're going to fire a bunch of them or he's just an idiot and he thinks that this is a great idea to get all the generals together because, the United States is not particularly popular. The wars that we fight amongst, the wars that we foment and the wars that we fight and assist with around the world are the most unpopular wars you can imagine. At least if you take it from a global perspective, most of the planet does not like the United States, and they certainly don't appreciate our wars. So what an opportunity that would be to have all the generals in one place. It's just crazy, but I'm not suggesting anybody's going to attack them. I think probably it's going to be a total a balloon burst thing. Nothing will happen. He's got this big meeting. All the generals will, have drinks with their friends afterwards and return back to their empire doing nothing. They were doing nothing before. They're doing nothing now. I don't see great directions coming out of this, but if you had the opportunity to do this and you had the power to bring them all home, first off, why not keep them home, right? Let's
right.
make this step one of pulling back from empire. And then step two, of course, would be, and this is what I was kind of talking about in my it was supposed to be humorous, but it wasn't really humorous.
It was actually. I was laughing as I was reading it. Yeah.
Yeah. But ideally, if Trump did, he said many things, Trump says stuff all the time, but I remember, and you do too, everybody, the peace world remembers that Trump offered and wanted to reduce the Pentagon budget by 50%, go from $1 trillion to 500 billion, which is still way too much, but that's a big drop. And he wanted to do that in the context of China and Russia also doing it, but China and Russia are happy. I mean, if you really were dealing in good faith, I don't think that would be a big issue because, Russia and China are not expansionary. We say, oh, but they're going into Ukraine. Oh, but China wants the yellow, the Chinese, what is it? The red, the sea, the ocean.
Red Sea, right.
Yeah. But but they don't really. I mean, they don't do it. They're really no more different than Trump saying, I'm going to call the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. That's how expansionist Chinese is. That's how expansionist Russia is. You know, if you think about the things that they're doing. So it could be possible, is what I'm saying. Trump said it. Maybe he didn't think it through. He just blurted it out because, of course, many MAGA voters or people that voted for Trump did want peace. You know, I think one of the things that many independents that drew them to Trump and made them come out of the woodwork and vote both times that Trump ran was Trump said, I want to bring troops home. And people care about that, you know, because that is, you know, they say, oh, well, we want issues that are important to us at home. Well, one of them is getting our kids back, you know, having our cousins home and not doing things that are making them drink and take drugs and kill themselves, which is what happens in imperial armies. And so anyway, he said that. And so I just built upon it. Wouldn't it be nice? Wouldn't it be nice if he would announce that we are changing the American military approach to really, truly only worrying about defending America? Because we don't defend America at all right now. We don't defend America at all. None of our weapons that we produce, that we make money on, that we talk about how great they are, none of them defend America. They don't defend Americans, and they certainly don't keep our country safe. You know, in fact, they actually in some ways make our country far more dangerous. And we don't really have, you know, we've put money into to the things you shoot at other people. You know, the fancy missiles and the laser weapons, all the things that we say, that's all offensive. If you really wanted to defend your country, your intelligence would be really good. Now, we all know our intelligence in the United States is so politicized that it isn't very good. It doesn't give a straight scoop. We have, and that may be one of the reasons Trump has no idea what he's doing, because what he's being told, we were going to talk a little bit about Ukraine, what is being told about the situation in Ukraine, we're not sure what that is. I think many of us follow a more broader you know, set of resources on what's happening there. So we have a good sense of what's going on there. And I'm not sure our intelligence community is delivering the goods to the decision makers. But anyway, if you wanted to defend America, you would have really good, honest intelligence that would be not just based on, oh, I saw this guy do that, but how do we understand the world? What is the deep historical story that goes with all of our potential enemies and all of our potential allies? You know, what's the story behind it? We don't do stories in Intel. You have to. You can't do it right if you don't understand where everything comes from. But
do we care? I mean, like, you've been in the military circles, so you give me your take on this. Mm-hmm. But it sounds like the president has objectives. It's not about understanding the world, especially as a hegemon. Donald Trump is looking at this from the perspective of a king. And from his perspective, America, I think he overestimates America's capability and he underestimates the capability of his enemies. Yes. And so in his mind, I can have a tariff war against the world. And then he's shocked when China tells him to F off.
That's right.
Or he thinks that, well, I can push Russia diplomatically or militarily by threats. Mm-hmm. And Russia tells him to F off, meaning, dude, you have no cards in this. And then he realizes, I have no cards in this. He goes up against Yemen. And Ansar Allah, in a paper, I remember, I think it was the New York Times, was pointing out that the U.S. couldn't get air superiority, and they nearly lost airplanes.
We had to vacate that battle. We left. Exactly. We left that because we could not prevail, and it was costing so much money to do nothing. And Trump does understand about money. He understands about borrowing it. He understands about spending it. You know, he does pay attention to money. I mean, that's something he brought into the office. That's been his life before he was president. So, mm-hmm. So he saw the thing in Yemen, the defense of the Red Sea commerce, as a total loser because we were spending all this money and we were not even impacting the effectiveness of the Ansar Allah to disrupt shipping. So he saw that and he pulled out of it. So I think when he gets decent information that he himself, based on who he is, can understand, you know, because he's not in the military, never been in the military.
Oh, but there it is. Who is he? That's
Yeah,
the rub, right? Because a lot of people think that he's this peace president. And from my point of view, he's not. He's an imperialist who wants to do this kind of, give me a take on that.
Yeah, well, I mean, he thinks the world is his oyster, and you can understand why if you look at if you look at how he was brought up and how he has lived his life. I mean, he was not just an American builder and hotel and casino guy before. He also had stuff around the world. Like, remember, he went to England and Scotland, and he played golf on one of the Trump golf courses in Scotland. I mean, come on, how many people have a golf course in Scotland?
In Scotland, I know.
He has stuff everywhere. So prior to Trump being president, you know, he would travel the world, and he would do deals, and he would own property, and he would develop property and make money. And I'm sure his taxes and his accountants, he must have whole rooms of them, you know, to keep track of everything. So for him as president, he brings that to the presidency, which of course presidents are told, American presidents have been told forever, you know, you're the most powerful man in the world, or woman, if he was one. But they keep telling them that. And they hinge that on nuclear power. You know, you have your hand on the nuclear button and you can blow up the whole world. Okay, well, actually, there's a lot of people that can blow up the whole world. You're not the most powerful. You know, many countries have nuclear weapons that can blow up effectively, destroy the planet. And I don't mean the whole planet will be burning, but all the major cities will be gone. So it's a whole new world after that. But they're told you're the most powerful man, and no one can say no to the president. They're like an emperor, and you need, if you have an empire, you will have an emperor. And so he was well suited to play that game and to think globally, not in the way that peace people say think globally, but to think globally more as a business person or a capitalist, if you want to say a shark of some sort. And again, we see whatever he does, we see it in everything that he does. And we were going to talk a little about the Gaza 20-point plan that supposedly he and his people came up with Netanyahu, of course.
Yes.
And it illustrates much more of how a person would propose a project, a building project, than it does any type of peace. There's no recognition of any stories. There's no recognition of any past history. You know, where's reparations? You know, Israel has illegally done a war that is not proportional to what happened. And also, as we know, in October 7th, a lot of those deaths were conducted by the IDF of their own people. That was the Samson option. No, not the Samson option.
Hannibal directive.
Hannibal directive, yes. The Hannibal directive was, there's no doubt that they implemented that because they didn't want hostages to be taken. They wanted to put a stop to it. So they blew up a lot of their own people. So the numbers of October 7th are shared numbers. Some of them are, and then if you add to that the potential, and the indications are that they did stand down on October 7th because they wanted an excuse to go into Gaza, because they were ready to go into Gaza and do something. And, you know, periodically they mow the grass in Gaza. This is a little bigger than mowing the grass, but it was time. It was, if you think of how the IDF operates and how Israel operates, it was time to go and give Gaza a shave. Put them, you know, do something about it, because the population had gotten up to 2.3 million. That's a lot of people. And 50% or more were young people and children. So they grow into political leaders. They grow into people with Palestinian identities, Gazan identities. So you got to stop that. So they had this planned, and the indications are, we're seeing it just as we saw with other false flags, that governments they set these things up or facilitate them in order to be ready for that next step, which would be the overcompensation, this massive non-proportional response. You know, even if people fly hang gliders in and they collect hostages, and let's say they kill people, because people were killed, no doubt, by both sides, by Hamas and by Israel on October 7th. But when your response to that is to obliterate 2.3, or to get on the path to obliterating 2.3 million Gazans, to destroy their cities, like we're seeing with Gaza City in the north, those cities were rubble before, but now they are flattening it. they're flattening it for rebuilding. And this is not my words. This is from Bezalel Smotrich, who says, yeah, the demolition is almost finished. The demolition is almost finished. Well, that's not a war term. That's a Trump term. That's a prepping the space term. So
to back you up on that, I think it was either Egyptian or Turkish intelligence that had told Israel that Hamas was planning an event.
yes.
And so the belief is that, oh, well, we didn't believe him. Okay, well, that's one view of it. The other view of it is we did believe him and we just let it take place. No, I agree with you.
Yeah.
I think the point that I'm trying to make is a point that you are making in that this is not about truth. This is not about honesty. This is about, we have objectives.
Yeah.
And so as a businessman, I want to make profit off of rebuilding Gaza. And let's be honest, I want to get rid of the people that are there anyway. And in the Ukraine terms, where they don't care about what's true. I guess that's what I'm getting at. I always make this argument that you tell the truth to end wars. You tell a lie to keep them going, or at the very least to start them.
That is so true. That is actually how it works. And not just in our era. It's always been that way. This is the way humans work. This is the way governments operate. How do we get this war that we want to profit? We envision profit. How do we go convince the people? Well, we got to tell them a story that they'll believe. Let's hammer them with all these elaborate lies. But yeah, when you actually break through and see the truth, you go, there was no need for that war. We didn't have to do anything. Peace was just, we could have easily sustained peace, but we didn't. That's the truth. And it's the truth everywhere. I mean, I was driving around yesterday and I heard on the radio, I think it was the radio somewhere, but they were talking about World War I. And we are still talking 125 years later about how World War I started because of lies and stupidity, and it was never a necessary war. That's 120 years ago we're talking about, because the truth makes peace. If you can get the truth out there. And of course, obviously, people have their perspectives, right? I mean, we see something, we may describe it differently, we may feel differently, but truth is the foundation of real communication, not lies.
Agreed.
And the people know that, but governments may know that, but it doesn't serve government purposes, for sure.
It seems, let's go to Ukraine and then we can bounce to Israel. It seems that, so Kellogg has come out and has made a statement that everybody has jumped on, and I think people are getting that statement wrong. In fact, just to play it for the audience, just so people will know exactly what I'm referring to. Now, listen to what he says very closely. Because, Joe Biden was presented with this situation also, where Joe Biden was like, I'm going to fire long-range weapons into Russia. Putin comes out, makes a statement, and Joe Biden immediately stops. Because what Putin was effectively saying is, if you do that, we are going to start targeting capitals, because that is no longer Ukraine firing, that is you firing it, and we're going to hold you responsible for it. So when Kellogg comes out, says this, everybody remembers the statement that Putin made. This quite a lot of
social media post by Vice President Vance.
I just want to clarify. Are you saying, though, that it is the president's position that Ukraine can conduct long-range strikes into Russia, that has been authorized by the president?
I think reading what he has said and reading what Vice President Vance has said, as well as Secretary Rubio, the answer is yes. Use the ability to hit deep. There are no such things as sanctuaries. That's one of the reasons I believe that this last week, and it has been confirmed, that President Zelensky asked President Trump to get Tomahawk missiles.
Now, these are very squirrely words. I do believe. So Kellogg doesn't know.
Right.
And people effectively jumped on it as if Kellogg knows. It's weird. It's like, why doesn't Kellogg know? You would think that he would have that information if he's effectively dealing directly with the president.
That's right. And Kellogg said read. He's read. He said he'd read. He didn't say he'd talk to the president. I don't think the president and Kellogg talk very much. But Kellogg is important because he represents our imperial deep state, motivated to sell weapons, motivated to create wars, caught up in an old anti-Soviet Union mentality. I mean, he's 80 years old. I mean, Kellogg, his military career was dominated by anti-communism, anti-Soviet perspectives, hysteria, whatever you want to call it. But that is what he remembers. And where's he been for the past, since he's been retired, nowhere. And then all of a sudden he pops up. He's back in power, in a sense. He's back in the visible, people ask him for what he thinks, his opinion. And he has been framed and shaped by the old Cold War, for sure.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate. It's too bad. And this is why we have retirement. Okay. he really is handicapped because he hasn't learned anything since the world changed. He's stuck in the past. So he thinks Russia is our enemy. He thinks the Soviet Union still exists, apparently. And it doesn't. And he also thinks that we have the best military on the planet and the most capable and the biggest industrial production system on the planet. And we do not. It's possible we did when he was in the military, when he was a 4-star general or 3-star, whatever he was. It's possible we were the leaders then, but we're not the leaders now. We would have trouble. In fact, President Trump has said this, we cannot produce drones at the level and rate that not just Russia and Iran can produce them, but all kinds of countries, China, India. We can't produce drones at that level. No way. I mean, if we started right now, which Trump wants to do, wants to increase our industrial capacity to make weapons. That's a long process with the way we do it in this country. We don't. We have a long process to get weapons to be fielded. It's not easy. Everybody has to take their cut along the way. This is a business. We're making money here. So, yeah, he's the wrong guy, and I don't think he's really that closely connected to Trump. Because Trump actually sent Witkoff. Periodically has sent Witkoff to go do what everybody was told was Kellogg's job. He worked in Ukraine. When he really wants it worked, he sends the guy that he actually speaks to face, and that's Witkoff. So this guy is a little bit out of the loop. At the same time, this discussion of tomahawks. It seems very messagey, like we're messaging rather than actually doing anything. We're telling Russia, well, you haven't stopped yet. Nothing. We've tried to talk peace and you won't do it. But really, the problem is specifically the problem is Zelensky, I think. And this reveals my perspective. But if you see a president of a country, and Ukraine is a country, it's a little smaller than it was. It's lost a third of its population, maybe a little bit more. It's very corrupt, but it was before. It was before the war. It was the most corrupt country in Europe at that time. It probably still is. But anyway, it hasn't gotten better during war. Wartime is not a time when you're going to get less corrupt. You're going to get more corrupt.
Right.
Because there's more opportunity, right? So he's in a corrupt country. He hasn't had elections. They're overdue, 2 years overdue, and there's no sign that they're going to have them anytime soon. He's unpopular. He was elected on a peace platform. Oh, doesn't that sound familiar? Just like Trump.
Yep.
Elected on a peace platform, but he is unpopular now. He would not get elected now if he had elections. So who is he working for? I mean, is he helping himself? Sure, he's trying to survive. But a statesman, a leader of a country, has to put their country first. It has to say, what is good for my country? And Zelensky doesn't do that. He travels everywhere. Please give us more weapons. And he's saying, what's good for my oligarchs? What's good for me personally? How will I stay alive another month? How will I be vindicated in this huge disaster of a 4-year war that I was talked into by the West, particularly the United States and Great Britain. So, and now Zelensky has bigger problems because since Ukraine is physically shrunken and, of course, militarily devastated, their army, they had a big army. I mean, they had a decent sized army for a country of 40 million, 35 million people. But that army has been decimated, not just by corruption, but, obviously 4 years of war, and it's not the good kind of war. It's not like, we're talking about war from our hotel rooms. It's not that. These people are dying on both sides. So they are a country that has weakened itself through this extended war. Russia has weakened it, but it has also weakened itself. And now you have these emergence of long-held animosities between Poland and Ukraine. And Poland is a very flexible territory. Over the past 500 years, where has Poland been? It's all over the place, right? This border, new borders. They have a vision of taking Western Ukraine. not the government necessarily, but you know what? If your neighbor's really, really bad, you might want to quote unquote help them out. Isn't that how we do it? We have, yeah. Well, let's help them out. How would we help them out? I don't know. Well, we could put our military soldiers there. That would be nice. We could help them out. We could help them institute order and get their trade agreements going, and then we could diplomatically kind of help them choose their next leader. This is all American stuff. I mean, it's everybody, but right now we can't associate that clearly with U.S. foreign policy. Right. But yeah, so they've got enemies there. The Baltic states have weakened themselves because they're very small. Baltic state, all three, Lithuania, Estonia, Latvia, they're very small, but they have a big mouth. They're very hostile. You know, they're all about, let's fight. Let's you and him fight, and we'll egg you on. You know, we'll do that. But that's costly. So those countries are not strong, and maybe that's why they feel so threatened by Russia, because they have weakened themselves in this long process of trying to expand NATO to the Russian border, which we had no business doing. We promised never to do it. But anyway, somebody thought it was a good idea. We can do it. We can make this happen. People with poor intelligence, I don't mean smarts, but poor information being fed to these leaders, telling them, oh, this will be good. Russia won't mind. Russia will have no problem with it. You don't have to be in intelligence to hear what Russia had been saying for decades before this.
Yes.
They said, absolutely, we're going to have a problem with it. These people living here that you're attacking and banning from speaking their native language are our people. We're going to defend them. So anyway, it was all pretty predictable. But I do understand why European countries, including Ukraine, feel very nervous, because the future could be very different than what they expected. Not just a reduced rump state of Ukraine, but Ukraine could disappear, and not because Russia occupied Ukraine, because Russia doesn't want to do that. They have no intention to do it, no ability to do it. They don't want to do it. But what about Poland? What about Lithuania? Lithuania and Poland and the Western Ukraine, they're very fluid historically. These are the same people. They have relatives, great-grandparents. You're on my farm. You know, this whole thing that causes the same problems in Israel and many other places. You know, it's we want the land that you're on, and we're going to take it. So very it's not good, but it could be that this tomahawk talk is propaganda for the purpose of saying we're not giving up, when in reality, and I'm sure Russian intelligence and other global intelligence is very aware of our fundamental ability to provide any tomahawks, which is small. Very small, just like it is to provide any type of major war materials that will change the course of the Ukraine war. We don't have that ability. We don't have that depth. We don't have the logistics to do that. So I think it's talk. I think it's idle chatter aimed at Trump trying. You know, Trump tries a lot of things. He goes from this to that, this to that. He wants to get peace in Ukraine. What he's been doing didn't work out because he didn't know what he was doing. He doesn't know this backstory. And so now he's saying, oh, well, maybe we'll get tough. We'll do this. We'll have a big war in Europe. And actually, the messaging could be to Europe itself, to the EU and to NATO, saying, you know what? You want Ukraine? You're going to have to fight Russia for it. And, you know, they're not capable of doing that. Nobody wants to do that.
Oh, wow. But there's the rub. If you've noticed, Europe has, and this is my concern. Europe has been agitated with all sorts of false flags. And they've been doing it consistently. In fact, this is Poland. This is where is it? Polish Prime Minister giving a speech. Here it is, Donald Tusk. I remember Tusk when he was running the EU, and now he is back in Poland as the president of Poland. Wow. He comes out and says this. And by the way, Lavrov has said the exact same thing. And I think both of them are telling the truth. And I mean it in literal terms. Let me play the clip then. Come on, Tess, talk for me.
Czy to się komuś podoba, czy nie? To jest nasza wojna.
He said, whether anyone likes it or not, this is our war.
Nie tylko ze względu na solidarność z tymi, którzy są atakowani, ale ze względu na nasz fundament.
Not only with solidarity of those that are under attack, but because of our own fundamental interests.
Fundamentalny interes. Jeśli tę wojnę przegramy, bo musimy
and we must speak
mówić w pierwszej
in the first
osobie.
person.
To konsekwencje tego
The consequences
dotykać
would
będą nie
affect
tylko
not
naszego
only our
pokolenia,
generation,
ale
but
także
future generations
następnych
in
pokoleń.
Poland and across Europe. So he's saying the quiet part aloud. Like, look, we've invested all of this money, all of this political capital, and not just that, this certain hubris and identity of what it means to be a European and a European power and our ability to project power. And we are getting crushed in Ukraine. We can't let Ukraine lose because of the ramifications associated with letting Ukraine lose. And so then you get false flags. Estonia is saying, oh my God, there are drones in Estonia. There are drones in Denmark. There are drones over Finland.
Yeah.
You get Poland screaming, oh my God, Russia sent drones without any munitions associated with the drones at all, dummy drones, entire airspace that they couldn't take down and ended up flying F-35s to try to knock them down.
Oh my
Missiles
gosh.
that missed landed on people's houses. And it's, oh my God, Russia dropped a missile on people's houses. And then the very next day, they would come out and say, okay, fair enough. This is our air defense. Like, meaning they are heavily agitating for war. And him making that speech, he's not the only one who's making speeches like that. Ursula von der Leyen has a clip where she's like, we need a drone wall that we need to put up. We need to give Ukraine $2 billion more. So it seems like they are deeply invested. And maybe in their minds, all of the pressure in the world will be applied to Donald Trump if we get into a war with Russia. Meaning, if we invade Ukraine, and Russia's already said that is a deal breaker. We will kill anybody who comes into Ukraine. You are fair game, and we mean it. What does the U.S. do? Does the U.S. look at that and says, oh, well, or are every neocon going to be screaming, oh my God, Donald Trump is abandoning his allies. Oh my God, Donald Trump is not helping the Europeans. Oh my God, Donald Trump is letting the Russians eat the Europeans for lunch.
Yeah. Well, it's, you know, the people you're mentioning, von der Leyen, Tusk, these are professional politicians. If you look at the level below the democratic level of the people of Poland, the people of most of the countries of the EU, and take the big ones, you know, they're talking about civil war in England or in Great Britain. France is on its fourth or fifth parliament right now. They big problems, you know, the people are unhappy. They're about domestic issues, of course, you know, they're not as concerned about, you know, people in countries care about domestic issues. That's just the way it is. In Germany, of course, they have to ban the AfD and they still are pulling majorities. So they got big problems one level below the mouthpieces at the EU level and at the top state level. So these guys, and Tusk, again, I actually did not realize what you said about Tusk being the EU president before. I knew had been in political circles for a while, but I remember even on the issue of the drones and the incursions, Tusk is like, oh yeah, we're not doing that. We can't tolerate this. We have to fight. But the president or the prime minister, whichever one, the other Polish guy that runs things, you know, they have the president and the prime minister. Yeah. He said, no, walk this back, buddy, because this is not happening. We do not have the capability. We're not going to war with Russia. You know, the best thing for Poland and for most of these European countries is to buy cheap Russian energy. Yes. That's what the best thing is for them to do. And they've shot themselves in the foot. We helped them for many years, or the years that this has gone on and prior to try to economically isolate Russia. But the problem is, you know, human beings that live in Europe, and you can say, well, there's a big immigration. A lot of them aren't European. I don't care. Everybody needs heat. Everybody needs shelter. You know, everybody needs a job. If your fuel costs are so high, it doesn't just affect how you run your businesses and your industries and your homes. It's also jobs. There's no jobs. If I can't afford to expand and hire, I'm not going to do that. So you don't have a job. Anyway, big problems in Europe. These individuals, and von der Leyen, they call her von der Leyen. But why do they call that? Because she's out of touch. She's out of touch, and she says things, and people in Europe hear what she's saying, and they go, who is she speaking for? She's not speaking for me. So I think that Russian intelligence and global intelligence, the other non-aligned countries or people that don't have a dog in this fight, they understand what I'm saying about where real political power lies. Sure, you have leaders and they have power, but you also have the people below them and they have power. And whether they're organized or not, or collectively acting or not collectively acting, they are a problem for whatever leadership is above. And so Trump is a master at connecting with a large enough group of people who wanted something, peace. They wanted peace, actually. And he got their support. And almost immediately when he started to do things like go back on his promises, the Epstein thing, he went back on the Epstein. Oh, there's nothing there. You people are crazy. Well, he spent an entire campaign running on Epstein, right? And so people said, people don't have loyalty. Human beings care about themselves, their families, their local community. That's where it starts there. They don't care about their country first unless they are psyched into that. Normally they care about what they care about at home. And they will throw a politician under the bus, even a Trump, and certainly a Donald Tusk. Tusk is not have the support
I see your
of
point.
Polish people. So
I see.
I mean, the Polish solution, I'm telling you right now, I know we have 2 humongous military bases, American military bases in Poland, but the Polish solution has been talked about for years. And that is, we will help what's left of Western Ukraine. We will help them. And Zelensky does not want, the last thing he wants is Polish troops in Western Ukraine. That brings back another set of stories. So there's a long history that's not entirely good between Poland and Ukraine. And so anyway, yeah, we got big problems. But Trump doesn't understand, really. I don't think he doesn't get told any of this. And he's not a person who spent a lot of time studying this before he became president. You know, he doesn't know. He knows what he knows. He knows where his golf courses are. You know, he knows how to invest in a hotel. So those are the things that he puts forth as solutions. And the people that want that, and Netanyahu plays him so well, because Netanyahu, now, the intelligence that Israel has, you know, they do put a lot of money into their intelligence. And some of it's politicized, like it all intelligence is, but a lot of it is functional stuff. And they go one step further. The Mossad, of course, goes one step further. They create their own information. They blackmail, they gather information in order to create the environments that they want, the decisions that they want in other countries. They actually manipulate those decisions. And, you know, we can see it pretty obviously in the United States, but they do this everywhere. They have a big program of doing that. And that's part of what they see as their necessary for national security. But we don't do that in this country. We think we know everything. We mislead our president. We elect presidents that have really no capacity to understand it. And then we say, oh, go play. The world is your oyster. You go play now. And we'll tell you what we think you need to hear, or what you won't kick us out of the office for telling you. And it's not sustainable. It is not sustainable. And so this is why I think now on the Gaza thing.
Let's hit that.
Yeah,
20-point plan that they've come up with.
Yeah, you know, there was one good thing in there, which was interesting, and that was that no Gazan would be required to leave, and and anyone who did leave, if they chose to leave for a little while, would be welcome back. Now, that's something the Americans put in there. That's not Israel's plan, and that's not going to happen. But I noticed as I read it, because I had to write up something earlier today about it, so I read it again, and they also in there's one mention in this 20-point thing of the Palestinian Authority, and it's an exclusionary mention. It basically says until the Palestinian Authority is reformed, but there's no discussion of that reform. That purely comes out of Tel Aviv or West Jerusalem or whatever, East Jerusalem, wherever it is, the capital of Israel. This is Netanyahu speak. And the other thing that is I think as even the Israeli media has said, that this is a way to buy time until the winter comes and disease and malnutrition, starvation, and bombs and lack of shelter kill basically half of those that remain. And I think by some counts, you've got 1.5 million Gazans left. And they're clustered in, you know, they're somewhere in the cities that they're bombing. So more are being killed as they take down Gaza City. They're killing more people who are unable to leave. But that 1.5 can be brought down, I think, to 600 million people. I don't want this to happen, but I think 600,000 is what Israeli will accept as victory, because they have 600,000. Only half of them would be men that could fight. That's 300,000. They'll be clustered in the south, and then it's all we care about, because Israel is planning They have detailed documents, not like the 20-point plan with no appendices, right? I mean, that 20-point plan, every single point should have had 2 or 3 pages of how they might do that. Now, I'm not saying they need to release that to the public, but there should have been some acknowledgement that we've been working on this. It's very, very complicated. You know, they talk about, oh, we're going to let food aid in. You know, they had the Gaza, the U.S. thing, the Gaza Humanitarian Organization.
Mm-hmm.
They had $100 million and 3 months, and they still can't bring food in. So this is not an easy thing to do. So that's why the 20-point thing is really just it's whitewash. It's propaganda, really. It is to buy time. I think it is to buy time for Israel to let the environment, nature, disease, and continued and give them an excuse for continued bombing. And also, I thought it was interesting, another American input. They had the disarmament section that we will disarm Hamas. Hamas will lay down their arms, but we'll go through, since we don't trust Hamas, we'll go through and take all their arms. And they mentioned a buyback. Now, you know, your previous guest talks about weapons. There's a lot of weapons in the United States. And so some cities, many cities, have tried to do buybacks. And this is what happens when you do buybacks, because people are capitalists. Everybody's a little mini capitalist when it comes down to it. You know, so what they do is they would turn in the pieces of weapons, whatever piece qualifies for a buyback, you know, like the front part, the barrel, whatever. And they would give all their broken weapons. The weapons, you know, if we have 400 million guns in this country, but how many are actually functional? You know, probably 1 per person. But that's 100. There's probably 100 million of them that are not really functional, that they're going to not work properly. They haven't been shot in years and years, or grandpa had them above the fireplace for the last, you know, century.
Right.
But those are the ones that get turned in when you do buybacks, because it's very profitable to do that. I mean, you're not using it, right? It's not usable. It's broken. And it doesn't work. It sounds good on paper, but it doesn't actually work the way they think it will work. And but that was mentioned in there, like Hamas is going to participate in buybacks. I mean, it's just.
I mean, much of this document was unworkable. I mean, like, for example,
totally
Netanyahu, before he even left, like before he even got out of Washington,
That's
he
right.
comes out and he gives an interview. And in the interview, he points out, look, there will be no state of Palestine, which was one of the latter points. It's like, we're going to, because I agree with you. Yes, they want to let winter do its thing. They also want to has a pressure release valve. So all of the European cities, or all of the European states that are getting pressured by their people to say, hey, see, I'm supporting this pathway to citizenship that'll take place in 100 years if, you know, Hamas is okay with it. The catch is, though, Israel has broken every deal that they've ever signed, has crashed every deal, and the United States co-signed them as they did it.
Yes.
So the U.S. doesn't.
Yeah. I mean, so you have a plan that's clearly, other than mentioning Tony Blair, who is a global war criminal, particularly well known as a war criminal in the Middle East. You know, everybody, we have the history books that show us that, and the people lived through it. So Blair has no credibility there. The only people they've mentioned is Trump, no credibility, Blair, no credibility, and Netanyahu has great credibility to do exactly the opposite of whatever he promises he's going to do. So,
and he says it. He says it openly, like right here. There are 2 clips. He comes out and he effectively says, look, we told them there will be no Palestinian state. And we told them that Israeli troops will remain in Gaza as all of this. I'll show the clip again, but basically that's what he says. Those are the 2 main things. But then when he's talking to Trump, he says that in Hebrew, by the way.
Yes,
meaning he comes out in Hebrew, says something completely different. And he says, Trump agrees with me on this. But then when they're asking him, when he's on stage, he makes the point very clear. Look, if Hamas is doing something we don't like, we will go in and we will kill Hamas. Yeah. So effectively, you know, deal or no deal, we are still going to do what we do right here.
To have Hamas stay. But if Hamas rejects your plan, Mr. President, or if they supposedly accept it and then basically do everything to counter it, then Israel will finish the job by itself.
Finish the job. Yeah, we murder every man, woman, and child. That's what we mean by
That's the
finish the job. And just to be clear, Donald Trump would not say a word about it. Meaning,
No,
if Israel says we need to go in and Israel clearly breaks the deal, Trump would just be like, that damn Hamas did it again.
Yeah, they caused it. Yeah. And
yeah,
it's interesting that the things that well, first off, it's interesting that Israel is bound by very little in these 20 points. The 20 points are all targeted towards what Hamas has to do, what Palestinians have to do, what we're going to do to them or for them or whatever, what cities we're going to build for them. But, you know, the right of return thing they threw in there. But if you look at the security borders, they're all IDF controlled. And they said, oh, we're going to have an international security force. Well, really? How long do you think that's going to be to set up? That's not going to happen. We can't even get aid in there with $100 million to organize a thing. We can't, it's not been able to be done. So for them so they're going to control the borders. So you can even discount the very wonderful thing that was on there, that if any Gazans leave, they're welcome to return. This right of return, which of course is horrendous to the Israeli population. They abhor any idea of the right of return, except unless it fits into a Zionist narrative. But this right of return will easily, that is beautiful. In fact, what better way to say to Gazans, oh, you know, it's bad, you're sick, you need food and water and shelter. You can leave, don't worry, you'll be able to come back. But who's guarding the borders? Well, it's the IDF, the same IDF that's been killing and slaughtering for almost 2 years nonstop. So this thing it's a ploy. It's really silly. And it's unfortunate that Donald Trump deals this way. I mean, he likes things to look like they're a package. You know, he's selling something, and this looks like something they're trying to sell. You know, he sold things to banks before. He sold hotel projects, building building purchases. And this is the kind of thing you give to the banker because you have a vision, and it's going to be so great. I mean, it's going to be so wonderful, right? I mean, all this stuff's going to happen, but then reality comes through as you try to build it, and many, many things change. And Trump's like, well, let's just go ahead and see if the bank will give us the money. Well, the world is not going to write that check. The world is not going to write that check for Netanyahu. Netanyahu he's not ready to deal with the world. He is very close he and his people, very close to what they see as the really ultimate domination of Gaza and an unfettered ability to certainly move south from the current border and go into and take what part of Gaza that they want, certainly down to the Netzarene corridor, I'm sure. And that's why they have to get rid of Gaza City. And once that's done, and think about, we talk about Gaza, we can't stop talking about it, but it's 26 miles long and, 10 miles wide.
It's small.
It's no bigger than a medium size. I think the city that I found, it's the same size as Kansas City or one of the cities. It's a large city, but not a massive place. Not certainly no comparison to the landmass of Ukraine. And yet, the equivalent of 8 nuclear weapons have been dropped on this very small geographic mass. So from Israel's perspective, this is doable. They're almost there. All they need to do is just keep stringing Trump's support along, weather the economic embargoes that Israel is beginning to face from the rest of the world, and they will be in control. I think they are out of touch with reality, and they don't realize how much they're harming Israel. Young Israelis don't want to live in Israel. They don't want to be set. The young Israelis don't want to settle Gaza on the bones and blood of babies that they didn't even know, that did nothing to them. So Israel is ultimately shooting themselves in the foot with all their stuff. And this will be the trademark. This will be what history concludes about Netanyahu's 20-something years of power. But that doesn't help anybody today. We always go back and have a better picture. We look back and we go, oh, yeah, we should have known that. Well, doesn't help the Gazans right now.
No, it doesn't. Karen, fantastic breakdown. I always enjoy these conversations with you. I really do. Thank you for this.
Well, thank you for having me.
No, absolutely. And just for the audience, retired Lieutenant Colonel Karen Kwiatkowski. She is U.S. Air Force officer with assignments including duties as the Pentagon desk officer, various roles, as a national security agency. She authored several books, including Africa Crisis Response Initiative, Past, Present, and Future, and Expeditionary Air Operations in Africa, Challenges and Solutions. One quick question. When you're at the Pentagon desk, how does the military view this stuff? I know they're under the civilian leadership,
Yeah.
but when civilian leadership is potentially taking them to nuclear war or potentially taking them into some conflict, what goes on in the mind of the people in the Pentagon? I mean, is that just agreement?
Yeah, there's been an evolution. They're people, and they're smart people. Many people in the military are very smart people. Just like anywhere else, you're going to find people that understand things. But since we've gone to an all-volunteer force, and this was many years ago, I think 77, 78, we went to all-volunteer force, ended the draft. And I don't approve of the draft because I see it as unwarranted state power. But without a draft, you basically contract people and you trade people's loyalty for benefits. And if you notice, military pay it's skyrocketed. You know, military people now, used to be military people were poor. You'd send them cookies on the weekends because they were starving in their barracks, you know, but it's not that way anymore. Military enlisted people, officers, it's a good living. Okay. It's a good living. And that's the trade-off. So you have this good living. You also recruit people that want to fight overseas, kind of like the French Foreign Legion, people that want to go shoot people. And those are psychopaths. And we attract many of those in the parts of the military where they can express their urges, their murderous urges. And I'm sorry to say that, but it is a measurable fact. Okay. That we, I mean, I've talked, when I taught high school, there were guys that said, I want to join the military. And I said, well, why do you want to do that? They go, well, because I want to go shoot people. But they want to shoot people. So this is maybe a uniquely American thing in our era. I don't know, but these officers and enlisted people who are in the military now and have been for 45 years, okay, have contracted, and they've traded prosperity and a good life and travel and maybe the opportunity to have some adventure or kill people, as the case may be. They have traded that for loyalty to whatever the military is doing. Now, the military has its own deep state. It wants to do what it did last year. It doesn't like new presidents that come in. I don't care who they are. I don't care if it's Clinton or Bush or any new president that comes in and tries to change what they like to do, right? And usually that's budget related. If you cut the military budget, you are not going to be their friend. And it doesn't matter why or how they don't like the budget cut. No government agency really does. So they do care about their budget being cut. But then when you say, well, how are we using this money? Where are we fighting? What are we doing? Are we really going to have a nuclear war? And what does that mean for me or us or my country? These are not questions that they're thinking about. In past decades, we have these examples. If you look at the history of nuclear accidents, okay, or nuclear close calls, and we've had a number of these.
Yes, we have.
And even the missile crisis in Cuba, that was an example of that, where we still had people that were running things that remembered war, right? I mean, we had Kennedy wasn't even that long out of the military by that time. So they remembered the costs. And people who remember the costs or think about fundamentals often prevented a nuclear disaster. The famous guy, there's a Russian major, I think it was, and he refused a command to launch a submarine. He was in submarine, so you don't get a lot of communications, and he refused to launch a weapon. And of course, it was an error. It was an error that he was told to do it. He resisted that and saved the planet, basically, you could say. This was many years, early 80s, I think, maybe the late 70s. I'm not sure. Yeah. Today, we don't have people like that in the military. We have contractors, whether they're wearing a uniform or not, they have agreed to obey. When you get tired of obeying or you really disagree with the thing, you get out of the military. And that's your right, because it's not a draft. You contracted. When you're ready to go, you go. And so we're losing the people that will stand up, and we're increasing a number of people who are bought and paid for. And I'm not trying to insult soldiers or people who want to serve their country, like the National Guard. And the National Guard is popular. Why is it popular? Because people think they're actually helping their country and they want to do that. But our military forces and our military kind of mentality in the Pentagon is is a danger to our country. In fact, it really is. These people, you look at the guys that are going to be at this meeting in Quantico today, the 600, 800 generals. How many of those guys do you think would hold up their hand and say, stop? Right? None of them. None of them. They want to do whatever they're told and get a good job in the defense industry afterward. Very few leaders are there. So this is also a danger. And actually, I think foreign intelligence that looks at our military and our government sees that. They see our general overclass, our admirals, our generals, these decision makers, as really a danger to the planet because they're not brave. They're not courageous.
My signal died. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, my signal died. I'm sorry. But your point is, by not having the draft, we've effectively we've made things more difficult. The people are going to follow orders. They're not going to question those orders.
Well, because the self-selection for the military now is what's in it for me. What is in it for me? Do I enjoy what I'm doing? That's one. Am I well rewarded, even if I don't enjoy it? Is it a good living? And it is. It is for so many. So this is a problem. This is a problem because they aren't the ones that are going to save us. And this is why I laugh at people for years. You know, I've been, writing and stuff, and I'm former military. And many people will email me throughout the years, less so this year, but throughout the years. And they say, oh, we just need a good military guy. We can have a military coup. We can, our military will save us. And I'm like, have you met the military? Have you met the American military leadership? Okay. It's filled with people like Petraeus, and it's filled with people like Kellogg. This is the military. These guys want war. It's all they know. They're rewarded for it. They have no spine, no backbone, no standards, no principles, and they don't share the values of the American people at all. And I'm just going to straight up say that. If anyone has evidence to the contrary, I would welcome it. I would want to find out. But from what I've seen and learned and observed, certainly in the last 25 years, our military leadership is not going to save us. They are part of the deep state. They are part of a self-sustaining bureaucracy that needs war, and it needs war spending, and it will fight for that. That's what it will fight for. It will not fight for Americans. It will not fight for peace. It will not fight to keep the planet from blowing up in a nuclear holocaust. It won't fight for that. It will just fight for itself and its own interests. And that's unfortunate because, that's one of the last trusted government agencies. People say, well, the military, I could trust the military. No, no, you can't.
Wow.
Not
Karen,
to say you can trust them,
terrifying.
but they won't save. They're not going to save this country at all.
Yeah, that's terrifying. That's very terrifying. Wow. Karen, thank you for this. Honest to God, you have a fantastic rest of your day, okay?
Okay, you too. Well, thanks for having me.
Okay, thank you. All right, we have come to the end. Shout out to Karen, shout out to Laith, shout out to Daniel Lazar. Appreciate all of them. Let's go to chats before we close. And we have, what's the name? Laugh66. If the demonic entity cannot get regime change any other way in Iran, it is not logical that they will drop a nuke on Iran. Oh, wait, let me read that again. If the demonic entity cannot get regime change any other way in Iran, is it not logical that they would drop a nuke in Iran? Let me ask you this. Do you believe that if Iran gave Israel a beating, that Israel would resort to nukes? I think the answer is yes. I think most people on this channel anyway would say yes. Would they bluff it to manipulate Donald Trump? Yes. But would they also be willing to use it? Yes. Like, it's hard sell for me that people who have literally been eliminating millions of people, who continue to eliminate millions of people, the majority of which are children, do it in front of our eyes so you can see it with your own eyes, with a propaganda outlet in the US that would just back whatever they say. So if they say, oh my God, We think Iran is getting a nuke, and we think they're about to put one on an airplane in order to blow up Israel, so we need to attack them with nukes. It would be a comically laughable story, but you must understand, sometimes the very act of arguing makes it look like there's an argument. One guy says the moon is made of Swiss cheese, the other guy says it's not, and people looking at it say, hey, these guys are arguing about whether the moon is made of Swiss cheese. It's not an argument. One guy's just incompetent. I'm saying that, and you see it on TV all the time. Sometimes it's like, hey, why did you put your hands on your wife? Why did you beat your wife? It's like, what do you mean? Why did I beat my wife? Okay, well, now you're in the middle of a wife beating argument where you're trying to explain that you don't beat your wife, and maybe you don't even have a wife. Just because there's an argument doesn't necessarily mean there's an actual argument. The US will back whatever Israel says. And so if they indeed resort to nukes, would you be shocked that the US will back it, especially if Israel is taking a beating? Well, I don't put it past them. F-66, I don't put it past them at all. Java Joe, super sticker. Well, thank you, Java Joe. Thank you. Look, I thank all of you, actually. Please like the content, share the content. You can support this content, buy me a coffee, PayPal, Patreon, Super Chats. As I often point out, your contribution makes the show what it is. You guys allow the show to operate. Many of these shows are demonetized because of basically the subject matter that we effectively talk about. So if you can help, please do. But either way, just watching it, sharing it, liking it, all of those things are beneficial to the show, and you have my deepest appreciation for it. We've come to the end. We have come to the end. By the way, Feilu, what is this? I am learning about CPC revolution, which the United States needs one like. CPC took the land, previously privatized landlords. We need something to take place here. We need something to take place. Feilu, I've had a conversation with KJ. Him and I are going to talk further over the weekend. And in a moment of rarity for me, I'm going to try to mend fences. So fingers crossed that we get him back on the show. But at the very least, both of us will understand where we stand either way, whether he wants to, meaning whether he comes on or not. Look, as I've told you guys, KJ was the one that I felt something about. Not because he was right. It had nothing really to do with it. I thought he was wrong for going after Dimitri. Well, he was wrong for going after Dimitri. If I get into a fight with you, then I can say, fuck that person. Never think about it again. Move on with my life. I didn't get into a fight with KJ. So it felt weirder. It felt like, what just happened here? It was shock. That always bothered me. And no, I didn't do anything wrong to KJ. So it's not even that. It's just the oddity of it all. I wanted to understand his place and his point. And I do understand where he's coming from. For me, the issue more so boils down to, this is a show of disagreements, conversations, sometimes arguments. I often bring people on that I vehemently disagree with. That disagreement doesn't stop me from having a conversation with them. If it's something I disagree with, I push back to get them to explain it more. And in doing so, hopefully you can get a better understanding of where both people are coming from. To me, that is the highest aspiration of the show. I think that's exemplified through Alex Craner, probably. When I'm having a conversation with Alex, and he has given his point of view of Trump, and I'm pushing back to give my model, and we're having this kind of conversation about this stuff, the audience can make their own judgments about which model they think is more accurate. But you would never get him to explain it if you just sit there and just, oh, okay, you move on to the next point. I think that's a weak show. I think better shows are shows that push, get clarity, get insight, those type of things. Those are the things that I think are better. Sometimes a person may say something that you think you disagree with, that you ultimately don't, when they explain it a different way. You never get that stuff if you don't prod and prod your guests. I'm saying that is the basis of the show. That is the way the show operates. There's some people who I have a conversation with. There are other people who I interview. Mark is typically an interview. Morandi is often an interview, even though some of it is conversation. Dimitri is probably a conversation. It just depends on the person. Some people are subject matter experts, and as subject matter experts, you're prodding them to get information. Houdainem, subject matter expert. I don't know much about Africa, so any conversation I have with him, I can only learn in that conversation. If there's something I don't understand, I can push and be like, hey, well, what about this? In which case you can explain it. That is the highest aspiration. That is what I want to do. That is my goal. That is my objective, without it going off the rails. Daniel Haiphong was never a guest on the show in real terms, meaning he was never a consistent guest. That's different to me. Not to mention, I'm very, well, whatever. KJ was a consistent guest. That matters more to me, especially since I've known him for, like 5 years. And it felt like over the course of the 5 years, we've had a professional friendship where at the very least I felt we could talk and he understood some level of me and I understood some level of him. If I am experiencing shock, that means that there's something I'm not understanding. But I do want to understand people, and I definitely want to be understood by people. And so hopefully we can have a conversation. And even if he doesn't come on the show, at the very least, mend fences. Garland and I are going to start our show back up at some point. Time zone is an issue. I am 11 hours ahead of him. So any show that we do, either it's going to be in my early mornings or his late nights. Like right now, it's 10 o'clock at night for me. Yeah, it's almost 10 o'clock. Nevertheless, him and I are going to try to resume our shows. Those are the only updates. I'm trying to think, is there anything else? No, those are the only 2 updates. There's no other update. There's no other update. All right, I'm going to end this. Know what I mean, but they have a point. It's a question of being one frame, vibing on some same wavelength. Ken Hamlin has written a few books, part of the Chinese history and historian. His narratives are close to factual truth. Well, I mean, the thing is, I've had plenty of Chinese guests, which was the other thing that I think bugged me about the conversation with KJ. It's like, dude, this channel doesn't harp on negativities about China. If anything, this channel looks at it as a new world and a different world. I will have people who would disagree. I will have people who would question China because China is a country like any other country. It obviously can be questioned. But that's not the tenor of the show. I don't know. I felt some kind of way about the way that ended. Well, either way, I mean, that's going to be up to him mostly. I mean, but I do want to hear his point, and I want to hear his case. And I'll explain my case. And hopefully there's some good leeway between the two where we can mend fences. All right. Carl Jha is a good for me. Carl Jha is good. Carl Jha, he was in the middle of the desert, though. So he wasn't available this week or last week. Hopefully he'll be back next week. No, I don't have beef with Danny. I don't have beef with Danny. We had a poor show. We had a very poor show. But beef, no. Sean Fu will be a good guest. I don't know who Sean Fu is, Cather. I don't know who that is. Yeah, I don't know who that is. Ben is good too. Ben who? DMT is better. Do you know that in Washington, D.C., DMT is illegal? You can buy it at the corner store. Economics and finance. Oh, I think I know who that is. I think I know who it is. Yeah, you can buy DMT. They legalized psychoactive drugs. So shrooms, DMT. I had one shroom experience. So technically 2, but the first one didn't take. The first one, I was in Amsterdam. And you could buy Amsterdam dried shrooms at the stores in Amsterdam. And the guy said, look, get the pack. You don't want to take all of them because you don't know your tolerance. Eat half and go sit in the park. And I did that. I ate half, went setting apart, nothing happened, so I ate the other half. I think what happened, I got lost trying to find my way back to the hotel. And you know, when you get lost, you get very focused on what's going on. So that was a fail. That didn't work. The second batch, I ordered and had them delivered to my house in DC. And it was such a weird experience. Because, like, you know, pot may, for me, the way I always explain it, part affects my heart center. That's the way I always explain it. It makes me less cerebral. It makes me feel more. And so I would feel another person's point of view more, as opposed to taking this kind of. One of the things about me is oftentimes I would discount feelings. I would discount my own feelings at times because feelings are not a good representation of reality. Not always. Sometimes they are. If you're watching a child get murdered, then obviously your feelings should be, this is outrageous. It should be rage, right? But sometimes they're not. People can feel any way about any particular thing. And oftentimes people are dishonest, or at the very least led poorly by their feelings about stuff when they're like making an argument that, you know, the president doesn't have power. To me, it's an emotional argument. That's not a logical argument. So I can discount those. With pot, less so. With pot, it's, oh, I empathize. I understand where the person was coming from. Oh, I kind of get it. I feel this particular way. It opens my heart center. Shrooms was different. To be honest, I didn't know what to expect. It made me, I remember that day, I had called my mom and I was trying to get across to her, like, I care so much about you. And it felt like there was no way to get it across with the force at which it was coming out. It was a very weird experience. It was almost like you were, yeah, that's hard to explain. That one was hard to explain. I forgot how long it lasted, slightly dazed or kind of hazy, but I just remember having this extremely emotional experience of like the force at which you care about a thing, and trying to communicate that with words, failing miserably to communicate the thing that you're trying to communicate. It was very strange. It was very strange. They say you shouldn't do that stuff by yourself. Well, at that point I was by myself, so it didn't matter. There was one other one I did, Sativa Dividorium. But that one only lasted like 5 minutes. So KN Knives, I know, but it's hard to explain. Like people, if you haven't done that stuff, it's kind of really hard to have. One time, my wife, there's a place called the Monroe Institute. The Monroe Institute is in the hills, like in the mountains in Virginia. Gorgeous campus. The Monroe Institute used to be run by Bob Monroe. Bob Monroe used to have automatic out-of-body experiences. He would go to bed, he would wake up on the ceiling, and he would freak the fuck out. And it kept happening over and over and over and over. He thought he was losing his mind. He didn't know what was going on. He didn't know how to control it. He goes to his doctor. The doctor tells him, yeah, well, you can go to India. I mean, those guys be doing stuff like that over there. And so he started probing the experience because these were happening to him constantly. It wasn't, it was like automatic. And he got good at probing the experience. And not just got good at probing the experience. Bob Monroe used to designate areas of consciousness, like meaning I think he would call them focus levels. He would do experiments where he would go to people's houses or go to locations and tell them what is in those locations to ensure that the experience was commensurate with actual reality. There were other times he was going to other realities, dealing with other. It is a wild, wild case. When I say stuff like this, I don't say this stuff in the sense that you have to believe me, because anybody can do it. It is a heady experience. It's weird. It's terrifying at first, but you can do it. Anybody can do it. So this is not, I have to take Jamal's word for it. My point in saying that is, if you are talking to somebody else and they've never had an experience like that, they have nowhere to put it. They don't have a box to put that in. And so they're stuck with this idea, either I believe you or I don't, which neither gets you anywhere. Because I don't want you to just believe me. It would be easier if you had the experience where there could be some relation. You can relate. We are on the same page with this in a way that goes beyond just, I believe this person, I believe that person. I've had a lot of weird experiences. And I was trying to take my wife, but I don't think we were married at the time. But I was like, let's go to the Monroe Institute. They have a one-day event where you can try out some of their techniques. And I was praying that she had an experience. Praying. She did not have an experience. She ended up getting into this really heady meditative state, but there was no separation. There was no, she didn't click out on anything like that. She's like, yeah, it was very cool. I felt very serene. I you know, I was like, it's not exactly what I was trying to get you to accomplish. Yeah. My point is, if it's hard to explain something and it's hard to give words to something, if there's not a corollary experience. The shroom thing was wild. Yeah, the shrooms were wild. Very well. She didn't find her animal spirit. She did not find her animal spirit, Peacemaker. Found her animal spirit. No, she did not. No, she did not. No, she did not. But yeah, that's more of a Native American thing, right? It's like Kumocha, like on Voyager, where Chakotay, he had like his animal spirit. It's like a muskrat or a deer or bear or something. Spirit guide, no, that was another thing she didn't experience. But most people don't experience that, to be honest. Like most people don't experience that. That's a wild experience too. Peyote, I've never tried peyote. See, I've always been afraid of psychedelics because I didn't want to get trapped. Like if you're doing LSD for 6 hours, whether you want to or not. Meaning whatever happens on that ride, you're stuck on that ride. Can't get off that ride. If you are seeing shit in your room, then you're just going to be seeing shit in your room for 6 hours, right? That to me is that's a bit terrifying to me. That's a bit terrifying to me. Alexandra Black, kids tell me that I am their animal spirit. Are you now? Are you now? That stuff will reshape your mind and will always for the better. Well, it depends on what it is. Have you ever read Carlos Castaneda? Carlos Castaneda are these series of books that are fucking mind-blowing. They're mind-blowing. And as you're reading the book, you think to yourself, I put it this way, I'll say it like a friend of mine said it. He said he stopped reading the books. He said because he thought to himself, if this shit is real, I don't want to know. Like if these experiences that Castaneda is claiming that he's experiencing, he's like, I don't want to know that. Like there's stuff like he's fighting demons, he's fighting witches. Like Carlos Castaneda was an anthropologist, and he meets a shaman in the airport, got like a witch doctor. Castaneda is intrigued by this, and Castaneda is like, I want to understand, like, what is your life? Explain to me what it means to be a shaman and everything else. So the guy invites Carlos Castaneda, I think they were in Mexico, like in the boonies, in the bush in Mexico. And he goes to experience this stuff with the guy. They were using mescaline. And as they were using mescaline, they were treating mescaline not as a drug, but as an entity, if that makes sense. Like, think of it like you need to go through a portal. And it is a portal for consciousness. And let's say your consciousness can be elsewhere. And it takes a drug to get you from point A to point B. In the context of that, you meet something and you're interacting with something, kind of like with DMT, people talk about machine elves. When they were talking about it, they were talking about it as an entity, as a being, that the drug was effectively getting you in contact with something that was a real thing, but is in a different dimensional space or something. And so Castaneda goes and he immerses himself in this culture. And I think in the first book, he ends up getting into a witch fight, like a magic off or something like that, with some random witch that didn't like him. And when you're reading it, you're like, okay, I've been fucking with him. Because you can read that book with the notion that they're totally fucking with him. He's so immersed. He's so drugged up. And they're telling him, there's a witch. She's at that house. She doesn't like you. And she's putting some kind of spell on you. And he's like, really? Really? And he says, they would tell him stuff like, get a fly, rip the wings off, and you can use that to observe what's happening at a distance. Like, it was very weird stuff in the book. And he gets fully immersed into it, and book after book after book. It is, yeah, it's fascinating stuff. That book is fascinating. Warlock, that's what it is, a warlock. It was a warlock. It was a warlock. I don't think it was a dance. There wasn't a dance off. They were having a magic off or something like that. Yeah, it was wild. Psychedelics are highly overrated and quite deleterious. Charlotte Roos. It depends, Charlotte. If you are somebody with PTSD, ayahuasca. No, is that it? Ayahuasca? Yeah. People who go on those to see shamans in like Peru or Costa Rica, and they have these experiences that somehow deals with the trauma that they experience during issues of war. Well, that's not deleterious, especially if you're not using it as a party drug. You're using it for rehab. People who go to try to find inner truth, again, that's not them using it as a party drug. That's them using it for some level of spiritual development. I remember there was a scientist who heard about it, and he thought to himself, okay, these people are having these weird experiences, but these are just drug-related experiences. He goes and does it. And in the book, he talks about how he meets these beings, and the beings are kind of looking down on him, and they're like, he thinks he knows so much. He's so full of ego. Now, they're talking to him, but not really to him. And he realizes in that moment how small he was, how little he actually knew, how his ego was creating a projection that wasn't entirely commensurate with the reality of how big and how, on some level, magical the world is, even though there's no such thing as supernatural. That's just a phenomenon we don't get. It changed him. Like, he comes out of the experience changed as a human being. Because of the experience, he received some level of truth that maybe he would have gotten 50 years later. Maybe he would have never gotten. It depends on how it's used. It's not an absolute. I get your point. If you are just binging shrooms, then yeah, obviously it's deleterious to your health. It's not the greatest thing in the world. If you are just doing DMT just for shits and giggles, okay, fair enough. I agree. It's not the best in the world. But if you're trying to find truth, that's different. I think that's different. Jamal Thomas, the quote, Alex Jones, Hitler took DMT, Stalin took DMT, Mao took DMT. Are you serious? Are you serious right now? Was that stuff even there when these guys were in office? DMT changes people's lives every day for the better. Coop. Thank you, Coop. Thank you, Coop. What is truth? What is truth? Ah, that's hard. That's hard. That's hard. Depends on what we're talking about, right? Depends on what we're talking about. But I think logic is truth. If I'm being like, if you're playing chess, there is truth in the game. Chess is just an allegory for things that take place in life, right? Strategy, the way you interact, the way you engage. There are things that are true. Habitual liars lie. That is a truth. 2 + 2 is 4. That is a truth. Like, meaning issues of logic is where you can find truth. Life is very messy. It's harder. That would be my point. Brush your projections. Some of them are, but how do you know that? Charlotte, how do you know? How do you know? If I'm playing a chess game and I find a mate in 5, that's truth. If God himself was playing, God is still stuck with the rules of the game. Now, mind you, in order to get that truth, you had to narrow down reality into 64 squares. Fair enough. But it's still truth. I do think there's a such thing as things that are true and false. If you molest a kid, you molested a kid. That's true, right? I mean, there are things that are true. Otherwise, you couldn't write software if it wasn't the case. Things can be negated. Things can be proven true. I get your point, though. Truth is hard, especially when you talk about life. Agreed. And usually it's contingent upon something else. Like usually it's a relative truth. If this, then this equals truth. No, I get it. I get your point. Logic is grammar, not reality. Yeah, but how do you have grammar without reality? What is your grammar for if it's not to describe reality? Like, what is the point of language if you're not describing something with that language? Well, I mean, what, you're just having conversations where you say hi? Hi. Usually, for you to get across anything to somebody, you have to give a description of reality. You have to give something that they understand. Grammar is just a poor reflection of reality that you're trying to articulate, right? I mean, I think that's true. Your truth might not be mine. Charlotte Roos, fair enough. It depends on what it is. That's what I mean. Sometimes it's contextual. I think Kaya Kalis is very attractive. I think she's dumb, but attractive. And if I had the opportunity, I'd be like, you're so smart. You're so smart. You are one of the smartest persons. Everybody in Estonia is smart. Whew, you're so smart. Really? Really? People call me dumb online. I think I've seen you call me dumb online. Boo, I would never call you dumb. That wasn't me. That was somebody else. I have a brother. We look just alike. Oh, okay. I mean, you did look like, I guess it could be your brother. I mean, okay, fair enough. Want to get some coffee? I have some upstairs. That is truth, right? For me, that's true. Somebody else might be like, dude, you're out of your mind. That woman is dumb as a box of rocks. How on earth are you trying to hit on her? Again, for me, that's a truth. Like something in me sees her and thinks, God, that woman's attractive. Somebody else might be like, you're out of your mind. Depends context. I understand. I mean, I do know this stuff's contextual sometimes, but logic is truth, unless you can find a hole in the logic. There's a difference in those things. If I'm doing math, and I know math has holes in it. But if I have one apple, I add another apple, I have 2 apples. That's true. Keep in mind, I wrote software. And in software, you're dealing with truth and false, or nulls, basically no values. You deal with logic constantly when you're doing software. There are true things. Otherwise, you can do software. It's limited. Agreed. I agree with you. It's limited. Life is messy. I get it. Like I said, those things have to be narrowed down to such a degree where you can, like, use it in essence. You should do a book club. Oh, okay, Ken. I have thought about doing a book club. Man, I've thought about doing a book club. I get overexcited by the books that I like, Ken. I don't know if you've noticed. Sometimes it would just be me gushing over the book. But yeah, I thought about it. I think Jeff Rich did one. He said his videos did pretty well. But yeah, Dune, Three-Body, definitely on the list. Godmaker by Hubbard. Oh, this is a fascinating book. Humanity Made a God. That book was fascinating. Oh, the book was fascinating. Because you must understand, Hubbard has this ability to mix science in with religion, or spirituality. Let's go with spirituality. And he has this fascination with God in the same way that I have a fascination with God. And I don't mean Christianity or any kind of religious thing. I don't mean that nonsense. I mean, like, the very concept is mind-blowing to me when you bring that stuff in the way that it operates in language. And I don't mean nonsense. I just mean religion is less interesting to me. Formalized systems, the more formal and the more specific you get about something that you don't encounter, the less accurate it's going to be. If you write a computer program that says, explain what life is like outside the computer, can it do it? Or if you tell somebody who's blind and you try to describe the color blue, could you really do it? How do I describe blue to a blind person? Like, without experience, it becomes hazy. And these guys are describing stuff very specifically that they don't encounter. I don't buy the premise, right? I think what's more honest is I don't know. Hubbard, and the way that he uses this idea of what it means to be a person in Godmaker is just fascinating. Yeah, I've thought about it. What is the last book I've read? I don't remember the last book I read. I went through all of Dune. I went through all of Three Body. I went through. There were a few that I thought were trash. I went through Hubbard's catalog. You know what's wild? The first book I ever read was Three Body. Like, I mean, the first like non-technical book. I mean, there've been books on physics, books on chess, books on New Age stuff, especially when I was younger. But when Three Body came out, I read that book, and God, man, I became a whore. I just became a straight whore. And it opened my mind to be like, oh my God, this book is so good. I've been missing this my entire life. And then you start looking for books that are similar. And it's like, okay, is there anything similar to this? This is good. And the answer is no. That's not entirely true. Wandering Earth was good. A Chinese author, at least for him, writes the book in a very different way than I've come across, because he is talking about like thousands of years of history, continuity of government, and he is talking about Chinese history also. So he goes into the Mao Revolution. He goes into what people were dealing with and going through at the time. And it's coming from his point of view of what took place in regards to Chinese history. To me, that was fascinating. There are elements of what is it, awesomeness, scientific triumphalism in the book that, even though it's hard sci-fi, it's profound and epic. I don't know if everybody feels that way about it. Like, that's my truth, right? As we're pointing out. But the example I always give is this idea of the speed of light. Like, humanity, there's a scene in the book where humanity needs to get a brain in a jar going at like 4% the speed of light, or 1% the speed of light, something like that. And the book, I think, is trying to make the point that with all of humanity's might, like with all of the power that humanity can muster in the form of nuclear weapons, meaning what is the most powerful thing humanity developed? Okay, nukes. And you take all of the world's nukes and you use it to that task. And the best that you could get was like 1% the speed of light. And you think to yourself, okay, the things that we're being measured by, yeah, on some level are each other, but there are also other measuring sticks. And the idea that even with all of this power that we were accumulated over the years to kill each other, when applied to this particular task, the best we were able to get was 1%, and barely at that. It's fucking profound to me. It's fucking profound. That book is so good. That book is so good. All right, we have come to the end. I'm only reading nonfiction now. Yes, I used to only read nonfiction before. It's only recently where I've started actually reading books. I need to click out of this stuff sometimes. I love the profundity of some of the concepts. And some of those concepts give you context in a way that you may miss. Like even when we discuss stuff, sometimes I would bring up an example from a book or an example from some other thing in order to kind of make the thing stick because it gives you different context on it. Yeah, and I spent the first 40 years of my life only reading nonfiction. I've started adding stuff to it. Some of those books are just good. Right. I feel like it's a waste of time and that I have my own imagination and that I don't need to live through someone else's imagination, if that makes any sense. Yeah, each his own. Each his own. But sometimes people say wild stuff. Like, it would have never occurred to me to send a flying brain through space at 1% the speed of light. At no point in my life did I ever come up with that concept. like there was nothing in me that would have prodded me to even consider that at all by any measure of anything. I would have went through my entire life without ever coming across that concept. I mean, I know it sounds silly, but to me, it's profound. The profundity of it is rewarding to me. But again, to each his own. Some people will look at that and be like, okay, there's some brain flying through the speed of light. What does it matter? It matters. It matters. It's showing real objective versus fake objectives. Fake objective, needing to destroy and kill other people. Real objectives. How do you advance as a society? And everything that you could muster as a society, the only thing you get is 1% the speed of light. Just one tiny fucking percent. It shows the scale of the challenge that we're faced with as humanity, as human beings. And we were nowhere in a position to deal with that scale. Or another one, taking a proton, expanding it out into, let's say, 6 dimensions, and building, is that right? No. Taking a proton, dropping it to 2 dimensions, and then building code in the proton. And because you're going from, let's say, a larger dimension to a smaller dimension, it expands it out from our perspective in the sense of width and height. So let's say you destroy one dimension in something. You take a person and you make them to a pancake. Okay, well, the other dimensions that are part of the 3 dimensions still need to register on the 2-dimensional frame, in which case it expands it out, making it much larger than it would typically be if it was still in this 3-dimensional form. And then adding software and code and mechanics, machinery to it, and then bringing it back down to the size of a regular proton. You've made a supercomputer the size of a proton. Like, that shit is wild. Like, the book is just, the stuff that the book comes up with is just wild. Neil Stephen's books. I am aware of Neil Stephen. I don't think I've ever read any of his books, though. Yeah, I don't think I've read his books. All right, let's call this a day. Let's call this a day. It was a book club. But see, then it's going to force me to read. It's going to be like, yeah, I didn't read anything this week. I'm going to feel shitty about it. I'll think about it. I would love to have one. I would love to have one with somebody else, though. Like where it's me and somebody else who's read a book and we can all talk about the book. Or all of us talk about the book. That would be cool. That would be cool. All right, guys. We've come to the end. For real this time. I'm going to say like. I'm going to say share. I'm going to say subscribe. I'm going to say be kind to the degree that you can be kind. Some people be tripping. So fair enough. But do your best. Have a good one all. Be safe.